doesn't really know what's going on. Oh, hello, hello.
All right.
All right, I'm going to go and share my screen and start.
And I'm going off of video to have a better reception.
Let me do this first. Okay, now where'd it go? Oh, wait.
I have it here.
There it goes.
I
And
have a number here.
share screen.
Yeah, and I would say give it a couple of
100.
minutes because
It's Stephanie's gonna call while you're on.
Yeah.
Steve.
the attendees are still rolling in.
There we go. All right, let me know when to go.
Exciting. We have 32 attendees and then 7 panelists.
And Emily said more than 60 registered today.
That's great.
Actually, we had over 90 emails of interest.
As you say, the next one, when things go right, is not going to be very interesting.
No, it will be.
Nobody cares about that.
It's gonna be great.
It'll be fabulous.
I was stewing on ideas for that one.
Oh, good.
I wouldn't have any history on that one.
I was thinking of ideas for that one too. We get a good mind meld going on.
Yep.
Because I'm going to watch the video anyway. Mine's available if you need.
So we have 38 people online,
Cool.
including our 7 panelists. So, whew, and we have somebody from Alberta, Canada, from -18
Ooh.
Celsius there. Ooh,
Wow.
it's a good time
Welcome.
good way to spend a chilly evening is attending the seminar.
Wow.
They used to have that.
And we have somebody from Saskatchewan
Oh,
also,
cool.
-23 degrees Celsius. And feels like -34. You
Brr.
brave souls.
Brr.
Ugh.
You guys are very
Thanks.
brave souls.
Son, did you get those pictures I sent?
I did. I used one, but the trailer aid I found one from Google.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I don't know why that one didn't send last night. So
No worries. The
technology.
exactly.
So we now have 40 attendees. And it is 5 after.
How long do we want to wait until
I'd go for it.
you go for it?
Go for it.
Okay. All right. Welcome everybody to our Endurance 101. And I'm going to say the word when shit goes wrong. How to overcome obstacles and our inconveniences and challenges at rides. And yes, there is a picture of course, we have the poop emoji. That's for Don Hilliard. And so we had to put the poop emoji up there. But the other poop that you see below that horse is my horse. And you'll learn more about this horse. Her name is Blossom. You'll learn more about her later. But that was some pretty poop after a ride. And I was pretty proud of it because I've had a history of her of having not pretty poop. And so I take pictures of pretty poop. So that is Blossom's pretty poop. So well, sit back, enjoy, and hope we all learn some things tonight. Okay, so our presenters, we have Lonnie Newcomb, Terry Carroll, Diane Connolly, and myself. And for most of you, first let me apologize that you all got about 5 different emails from the webinar from me. This was because the email systems were sending in the back saying, we don't like the word shit. And I'm like, okay, well, then I had to try to be sneaky ways. I finally sent out the only as the email without the PDF because it kept coming up. No, we won't like the word shit. But I'm hoping that you all, yeah, technology at its best. I'm hoping you all got a chance to read some of this. All of our email addresses are here. Please reach out if you have any questions or need any further information. Okay. This is put on by the Old Dominion Equestrian Endurance Organization. We've been around for a long time. We host our 3 rides in Virginia. And this year, we're very proud that we're going to be hosting the ARC National Championship in Orkney Springs. We are looking for volunteers for this. Diane Connolly, who was one of our presenters, is a ride manager for ODEEO. And I know she's looking for volunteers. And also I put who our rides are sanctioned by. The next is when I put this on Facebook to advertise it, I was blown away by the amount of chatter I got on the post. It was kind of exciting. And a couple people threw some stuff up there, and Heather Wickelson, who I know, she's ridden hundreds, she said, overcoming the shit that goes wrong is what makes this sport so addicting. And I said, Heather, can I quote you? Because I'm putting you in my webinar. And she laughed and said, of course, because she's right. You're going to hear us, many people talk about what you learn on these rides and what goes wrong. You learn more on a good ride. Our next webinar after this is actually when shit goes right. And we say we won't have as much to talk about. I kind of disagree knowing the panelists, but I've not done the sport for a long time, but the bad rides have taught me a lot. And then as it says in here, it helps be flexible. There's prevention, having a plan, and being prepared is key. With this, what I'm going to do is go to slide 5 and turn it on to Lonnie Newcomb. And Lonnie, you want to do a brief intro, and then, why did not work? Oh, Lord, hold on. Technology. This is how I'd be flexible. What is going on? Oh, there it goes. Phew. Okay, Lonnie. Sorry, go for it. And I got your picture in.
Awesome. Okay, so my brief introduction is I started endurance riding at the Old Dominion when I was 16 years old. And actually I lied about my age and I was 15 because I didn't know anybody. And I met the most incredible family of people you could ever want to know in your life. I mean, just the endurance people are, once you get into endurance, they are your family. They will help you. They will dig you out of holes. They will pull you out of the sand. And you've opened up a whole new avenue for you and your horse that will carry you for the rest of your life. I would think that the most of us here on this panel, because when you first start, endurance riding goes in a cycle, and you start out when you first start and you're a green bean and you're wide-eyed and your tail wags and you're so excited and you just want to come. It's kind of like running your first marathon. You just want to come and be there and meet all these people and see how everybody does things, and then just complete. And you're so tickled, you're so excited. And then what happens is you start, as the years go by, you start creeping up and you want a top 10 and you want to be competitive. And I think most of us on this panel right now have fortunately gotten past that. And our goals, most of us have a goal of longevity for our horses, is we want our horses to start competing when they're 4 or 5 and to still be competing when they're 25 and to be happy every minute of it. I mean, that's because it's not that speed is bad. It's not that going fast or being competitive or winning is bad. That's not it at all. And there are some spectacular horses who can do that for years and go and win across the country and across the world and be amazing. But most of us don't have those horses. We have a horse who's a friend of ours, or who's a horse we've had in the field, or a horse we find. And we want them to last for years because it takes so long to get them to where we want to be near them, that we want to keep them forever. So that's most of our goal in this presentation, is how can we keep them safe and happy and wanting to go with us? And some of this stuff seems very obvious, is bring a sound, healthy and well-conditioned horse. And I would suspect that most of us would say the most important thing with this is don't overtrain. Is when you first get into endurance riding, you've got this whole schedule and you're massively annoying because you can't ride with somebody because Wednesday is your speed day, or you can't ride with somebody because Saturday is your long distance day. And that's all good. But you'll find that your horses do better once they get to a level of conditioning to don't ride them so much. And I have to admit that our horses do not get ridden in between rides. So they might only get ridden 12 times a year because we don't have time to ride them. We have other things to do, and they all manage to get around. I wouldn't recommend that, but they can do that. Is our horses only get sat on at endurance rides, and they're like, this is awesome. I'm happy. I'm forward. I want to do this. But that's after they've gotten to a certain level of condition. But again, not overtraining is not sticking to a schedule and not listening to your horse is going to be the thing that keeps your horse going the longest. And again, good feet. Your farrier is probably the most important person in your whole team, because you can't make good feet, but you can take care of them. And we usually try to schedule our shoeing. You know, of course we wouldn't go to a ride with shoes that are 6 weeks old or 7 weeks old, just because that's asking for trouble. And so we usually try to schedule our shoeing so it's about 2 to 3 weeks out, just to try to minimize problems. Stuff's going to happen. If stuff's going to happen, you're always going to carry boots of some kind. I mean, if you get out there on the trail and you say, I lost a shoe and I don't have a boot, my sympathy is about this big, because you know what's going to happen. Shoes are going to come off and they're going to fling off in all different directions. And we always carry 2 boots per horse, because if you lose a shoe and you have a boot on, you now don't have a spare. So we always carry 2, because I don't ever want to be without a spare. And so if you're a boot person, good luck. No, I didn't say that. But I find, you know, we've all been through different kinds of shoeing. We've all been through titanium shoes. We've all been through natural balance shoes, and there's a whole bunch of different things, and every horse needs and does well with a different kind of shoe. Some, depending on what ride you're going to. If you know you're going to the South Mountain ride, you very well better have pads on. If you're coming to the Old Dominion, you'd have much better luck if you have pads on. If you're going south or in the sand, maybe you don't need them so much. But again, don't miss that one detail, is say, I know I'm going to the South Mountain ride. I know there's 50 miles of rock out there. I will be better off if I wear pads. The most impenetrable shoeing we've ever done is if we have horses who don't have great feet, so you can't put pads on them, we glue on boots over top of their shoes. As we put their regular steel shoes on with no pad on, and then we'll glue on an easy boot on top of that, and they can go over a trash fire in those things. I mean, they can go, if your glue works, you can go over glass, you can go over rocks, you can go over anything, because the easy boots are pretty darn impenetrable if you glue them on. But we've got shoes on underneath just in case there's a failure somewhere, and also the shoes give them more support. And so your shoeing is really your most important thing, more than training, more than anything, because without shoes, you're not taking one step. So be prepared, know what works, ride accordingly, because if you don't yourself take lessons and ride balanced, if you go willy-nilly down a hill and you hit a ditch at the bottom, the chances of you're pulling off a front shoe are excellent. So again, when we ride, somebody says, gosh, you must have a lot of time to think about things. Like, no, I'm actually riding every step. I'm watching every hole, every foot, every mud puddle, everything, because I'm watching for my shoes. The reason that this picture is here is the logical thing. I mean, we say your horse must be well fed and hydrated. And it's like, well, duh. I mean, I feed it and I water it, but you can totally blow it in the last 48 hours or so, because trailering for horses is very stressful. And the trailer that you put them in is part of the problem, is part of the thought, part of the things that go into it. But if you're trailering just an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, it's no big deal. But if you're doing longer hauls, if you're going to Broxton, or you're going to Florida, or you're going to California, how the horse handles the trailering is critical, because when you first start trailing your horse, they climb in the trailer and their eyes are big as houses, and they would not even dream of eating or drinking. And depending on the layout of your trailer, like we use everybody uses a slant load living quarter trailer, and we use that for years. But our personal problem with that is I can't access their heads very well. So it's hard when you stop, you have to get a step ladder out and you have to, pass them food and water through the door. And they're looking at you thinking, I wonder if I can fit out through this window. And so they're not really concentrating on eating or drinking. And if you remember all the things you read when you were little, is it said, or even now it says, don't feed your horses on the trailer. Well, our horses are going like 12, 18 hours or longer when we drive to Oklahoma. They're going long ways. They have to eat and drink. They cannot travel on an empty stomach. If you didn't have an ulcer before, you're going to have one now. So they have to eat and drink. And it's important what they, feeding them wet food. So what we did is we switched to a head-to-head that's why we drive horse fans, is so the horses right in this picture right here. So these are horses just after Biltmore. Don Hilliard took this picture. It's just after Biltmore. They've just done 50 miles. They should be tired. They look pretty happy to me. I mean, if you look at their faces, they're like, yeah, this is good. Let's make the trailer go. And you can see the two horses near to us. They are hungry and they can't eat enough out of a hay net. So we don't even make them eat out of a hay net. We give them sort of free choice hay so they can eat a lot of hay. And then the hay nets are for when they run out of their regular hay and they want to still keep eating because they're hungry. They're going home. They've just done 50 miles. There's also a blue barrel in the back. It's a 30-gallon water barrel. And so every 4 hours or something, we stop and we open the door and we go in there and they'll drink out of the barrel or we'll carry them water. So they'll easily drink 30 gallons on the way home. I mean, these guys are eating and drinking fiends. And that's your biggest thing as far as success for the ride is making sure you teach your horse to eat and drink on the trailer. Because I have one who's always kind of ulcery and he won't eat or drink for the first 5 hours of any trip. And I know he's damaging his success rate on the ride because now he is dehydrated because he hasn't drunk for 5 hours. He hasn't eaten, so he's behind. So when I get to the ride, I'm going to have to be that much more careful to plump him back up before I start, or just go very, very slowly. Is you can't when they get to the ride, they are going to be somewhat impacted. They are going to be dehydrated, and you cannot just jump on and gallop away on a 50-mile ride. It either takes them a day to recover, or longer if it's been a longer trip, or longer if they haven't been eating or drinking. So a while ago, I was very, very fortunate, and I got to go out west, and I rode some rides with Becky Hart and Judith Ogus, who are some national and international champions. They've won a bunch of stuff. And again, you've read in your life that you should unload your horse every 4 hours on a trip. And we're all like, yeah, no, not going to happen. I'm not taking my horse out along the side of 95. Well, I was flabbergasted because these are world champion riders. And what they did is when their watch said 4 hours, they would pull off on the side of the road. And we pulled off at a Texaco station. We pulled off, literally on the side of the road. And they would hop out and they would set out. We had 4 horses with us, and they would set out 4 buckets of water and 4 buckets of mash. And they would take the horses off the trailer every 4 hours. And the horse knew where it was going. It went to the water, it drank the bucket of water, and then it ate the pan of mash. And they rested for a couple minutes and they got back on. And when those horses got to the rides, they were ready to rock and roll, and they won everything because they weren't fatigued by the trailering. They were hydrated and well fed, and they were full of fiber. So when they got there, they were ready to go. They weren't playing catch up. The rest of us haven't had that time to train our horses. Most of us don't train our horses to eat and drink on the trailer as much. So anyway, so that's one of the key things you can do, because as Sonia was saying, is if you get there and you notice that of these 4 horses here, one of them doesn't have an elephant-sized pile of manure. It's only got 1 pile of fecal balls, and they're sort of small, and that horse is going to be in trouble. I mean, you need to know that. You need to say that horse did not poop 5 times on the way home or on the way there. It only pooped once, and they are small. You need to pay really, really close attention to that horse because you are starting dehydrated and you're going to get in trouble. So you need to react accordingly, whether it's what you feed it or what you water it or how you electrolyte it. So we think trailering is almost the most important thing you do. And again, you want to be prepared for the terrain. So you want to be prepared for the weather. You want to be prepared for whether you're going, if you're going to a hot ride, if you're going to Iron Mountain, do not only ride in the cool part of the day, ride in the middle of the day when you're training, when it's noon and 1 and 2 and 3 o'clock. Do not, ride at night, because you've got to be ready to ride. Cold is a little easier. Horses love cold. So it's easier to get ready for cold, not minus 23 degrees, but when you're getting ready to ride in the heat, you have to, know your electrolytes, know how you're going to give the electrolytes, and how often and when you're going to start, because you're going to start the ride dehydrated and deficient, and you need to make sure you don't make it worse during the day. Because it's also important to teach your horse to eat and drink at the ride. That's the difference between success and failure. And when your horse first comes to a ride in your first year, that is supposed to be the two of you, your learning year. So it is not when you're learning to go fast and ride with your friends, and when your friends leave, your horse jerks his head out of the bucket and runs after them. Your first year is supposed to be when you teach your horse, I come in off the trail, I've got my eye on my bucket and I'm going in and don't get in my way. And they have to learn to eat and drink, because if the kind of horse that dances around and dithers and screams and whinnies, and either bring a friend with it, which is what we do, or wait and be patient and stay there until the horse eats and drinks. Because once they learn to eat and drink, they know that. But if the first couple of years you let them go with their friends and go fast and not listen and dither and dance around, then they're not ready to go. They don't have the reservoir that they need to be successful over the longer distances. So you have to teach. It takes a while. It doesn't. If you say my horse just won't eat, then wait. Be patient. Take more time. Take more rides. Be patient. It's just like if you say my horse never drinks. Don't say that. It'll drink when it's ready, but just don't go faster until your horse knows how to eat and knows how to drink. And then again, with that is just ride the speed that you've trained for. If you're normally walking and trotting and you're not getting a lot of cantering in, then don't go out on a ride with your friends and canter and think you're going to be okay. You have to train for the speed you're going to be going. But again, so Patty Carey, who's very, very, very wise and has lots of miles and lots of brain cells, she says it's really better to bring a horse who's 100% sound and not 100% fit, because you're never going to be 100% ready for a ride. Nothing is ever perfect. You're never going to say, oh my gosh, I am totally prepared. Everything has fallen into place. That's when the doo-doo really hits the fan. So you're never going to be 100% prepared, but it's better to be completely sound and willing to listen to your horse than to bring a horse who's super fit because you rode the tar out of it, but it's not really sound. That's Patty's very wise. Okay, that's my comment.
Okay, cool.
So
Right.
before we move on, I want to ask the panelists, we have questions that are coming in that are specific to this slide in this chat. Do you want to address those now, or do you want to address them later?
I think we should, my feeling is we should go forward, and because we've got lots of really amazing information. And then if we have time at the end, or we'll all email afterwards too, that we love to email.
Perfect.
But that's,
Thank you. So I'll keep track of the questions. So stay tuned, folks. Your
Thank you.
questions are very good.
Let's hope I can get this thing to go forward. Technology. Yay. Sorry. I got excited when technology works. I don't always trust it.
Okay, so Lanny gave fantastic information about how to get your horses prepared. We sort of broke this discussion into the top things that usually do go wrong. That's how we're coming up with what information we decided to share with you. And after your horse, the rider drama is usually the next thing to start happening, whether it is whining for the sake of whining or legitimate tales of woe. You can help yourself out by arriving in the same fashion that you expect your horse to arrive. Are you sound or healthy, and are you conditioned for the work that you are starting out to do? If you're doing 25, are you fit to do 25? If you're doing 50 or 100, are you ready for that? It's really important that you be ready, because if you get halfway through the ride and start becoming a passenger, or worse, a burden to your animal, you're causing them to have to do more work than they should have to do. We describe, anyone who has seen me at a ride, or I'm hoping to meet all of these wonderful new people that are participating in these seminars. I travel with a group of teenagers, and my protocol with them is that we go from being a sack of potatoes to being a passenger, to being a rider, then to being a trainer. And we constantly evaluate where we are in that game. And as you get more fatigued, you go further down that ladder to where you start becoming just something heavy and off balance that your horse has to lug around. So whether that means that you get yourself fit by doing more riding or barn chores or hiking, biking, treadmilling, swimming, running, weightlifting, yoga, whatever it is that you choose to do, just know that you are going to be a partner to your animal. Not all of us, don't get me wrong, not all of us do workouts every day of the week. We have jobs and houses and barns and horses and things that we take care of, but we put ourselves in the position to be ready to participate with our animal. Oftentimes, I will hear that riders are spending so much time working around camp, packing the trailer, getting things ready, getting camp set up. They're not eating and drinking, or they're so nervous about the event, they're not eating and drinking. This is the number one thing that will kill you in the course of a ride. No matter what else you do right, if you are not hydrated and if you haven't been eating properly, you will go down. We love to tell the story of one of our riders who was a bit on the older side at this point. Back in the day, he would never eat and drink, and we would, at every vet check, please have a drink, please have a drink. Well, at the finish line, I was waiting for him, and someone was bringing in a horse that looked really familiar, but my rider was not there. My rider was laying on someone's front lawn being hosed off because 2 miles from the finish, he had just passed out, hadn't been drinking, hadn't been eating all day, and he was done. His body gave out. So if you maintain yourself, that's one thing you can check off of the list that can sneak up on you. Being mentally prepared is another thing. Don't psych yourself out, people. We do this because it's fun. There is no reason to get all torqued up and all knotted up about this event. If you're not enjoying it, take up golf. We're all in this to enjoy. So relax and just be in the moment. Sleeping is something I hear a lot of people moaning about. Oh, I didn't sleep all night. I was so worried about this and so worried about that. At least if you can't sleep the night before the ride, because many of us struggle in a camp with our horses, at least try to be well rested coming into the camp. So get as much good sleep as you can. Give yourself an opportunity to be successful. Set yourself up for success. Have a plan. Don't just saddle up and go with the flow. If you try to let someone else dictate what your day is going to look like, the chances of having drama go up 1,000,000%. Know what you and your horse are prepared to do. Know how you train. Know how fast you normally go. Don't hook up with someone who goes faster than you do, or in reverse of that, don't try to stay with someone who travels slower than you normally do. All that will happen is your horse will get frustrated, and you're stressing your horse's body out by making it move in a more collected manner than you're used to moving. So ride your own plan throughout the ride. Ride vet check to vet check. Know what your strategy is for each loop. whether you want to go super slow in the beginning and speed up as you go. Know if there's a mountain, you're going to take longer on that loop. You're going to go faster when you get done with the mountain. You're going to ride fast and then slow down. Whatever your plan is, stick to it. Do not let others dictate your plan. You should also have a strategy for how you handle the vet tech. Lanny already said it. Train your horse to eat and drink. Those are the most important things. And train your horse to relax in a vet tech. You do that by training. So every time, even if you do one little loop around your own field at home, when you come back, there's a bucket of mash. The horse should be offered that bucket. That bucket says, we're done now, we're resting. So even if you have to pretend you're doing loops at home, keep bringing that horse back to that bucket of mash. That says, relax, take a rest, and eat. Well-fitting clothing is huge. Do not be tempted, just like you don't do with your horse. Don't put new things on the day of a ride. Everything from the inside out, all of the indelicate things that there are questions going around Facebook about what kinds of undergarments that you should put on. Don't try them out the day of the ride. I made that mistake once and ended up going into the trailer during a vet tech and literally cutting underwear off of my body because it had shifted in the wrong place and was causing problems. So you want to make sure that everything you've got on is something you have tried not once, not twice, but 3 times. And those are the things that you're going to wear and be comfortable in all day. That said, when the rain starts coming, all bets are off, everything starts rubbing. And for that, we have an answer later in our discussion. But from the socks to the underwear, to the pants, to the shirt, to the jacket, to whatever it is you're going to put on your body, make sure it's something that feels good. Safety equipment, helmets are a thing. They're the rule at most rides. If you choose to wear any other things, gloves, half caps, air vests, even water packs, again, make sure you have tested it on multiple rides. Make sure that it feels good. It's not banging on your back, not causing you to have problems that you just don't need. And then just to help yourself out, because it's a good thing to know, basic first aid. Know how to stop bleeding on yourself and your horse. Know, what that looks like and how you can help yourself out if you need to. CPR is great if you have access to that kind of training. But just having a little bit of basic knowledge in that means that you won't panic when something does happen.
Okay. So we did horse and rider, and now we're going to talk about tack. And Diana's going to share her information about tack.
Okay, again, this is ounces of prevention so that we do not end out having any issues at the ride. And we'll talk about tack. Let's start with before you ever leave home. The first thing is, and the older you get, the more important this becomes, and that is making yourself a checklist of all your tack and equipment. That includes buckets, canopies, but mostly your saddle, your bridle, and that you literally make sure it's in the trailer. I have seen more riders as a ride manager come to me saying, I forgot my girth, or I forgot my helmet, and running around trying to get somebody to loan them a girth or a helmet. So one is making sure you've got it all in the trailer. And something I want to add to this slide, and I don't know about y'all's farrier, but one of the best things that I've ever done, my farrier is an endurance rider himself, and after trimming my horses and before putting new shoes on, every one of my horses, he has set 4 shoes for that horse. They're in Ziploc baggies with that horse's name on it. when shit does happen and you lose a shoe or whatever, can really speed up the work when you can just hand the farrier your shoe, the bag of shoes that is already shaped for your horse, and it's the kind of shoe you use. And that can really save the day when shit does happen. The next thing, and if you have a horse that's super sensitive or girthy, this next suggestion is critical, and that is clean your tack before you go to the ride. Before I go to the ride, I wash every saddle pad, I wash every girth. The other thing I do, and this is preventative, is put in an extra saddle pad, put in an extra girth. Sometimes I take different kinds of girths so that if one girth is rubbing, I can switch to a different girth to help prevent those girth calls. And after you clean the saddle pads and the girths, the next thing is to literally do an inspection, a check of all of your equipment and your tack. Check the bridle, check the cheek straps for wear and tear. Check the your billets on your saddle. And we will talk about what to do when those things go wrong on the trail. But a story I will tell is Adelie crossing a river and
Diane,
her billet broke on her.
Diane, I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Your audio is blipping in and out. Is it possible for you to turn off your camera and see if that helps with audio?
I thought it was turned off. I just did. I thought it was turned off. Is that helping?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sorry. I thought it was turned off. Okay, so doing a full inspection of your saddle, your girth, your pads, your billets, your stirrup straps, and your stirrups. Because sometimes your stirrups will start having a crack in them. If you catch that before you go to the ride, switch out your stirrups or duct tape them or whatever, it can really prevent shit happening out there on trail. Then ride. So you've done all of that. You made sure everything's in the trailer. You get to the ride, you want to do a pre-ride check. And you want to do a warm-up ride. And this isn't the warm-up ride for the horse. It's for that last final check of tack, that you put the tack on, you girth up the horse. It sometimes will catch that there's a problem. If the horse is girthy and they aren't liking you putting the saddle on, you might have a burr under the saddle pad or something. But it also is your final check to make sure you actually have all your equipment there at the ride before the morning of the ride and you're saddling up and you're missing your reins or whatever. So, and then the final thing on here is, and making sure you have your helmet in the trailer and examining your helmet to make sure, especially if you've taken a spill off your horse or whatever, to make sure your helmet's in good working order and doesn't have a crack or the straps aren't worn. But then the rule of thumb, and everybody says this, is never change. Kind of like Terry talking about never wear new equipment or new tights or for the day of the ride. Don't change tack, what you've been riding in and training in. Don't change that the day of the ride. That is just asking for problems. Later
Okay.
on, we'll talk about when shit does happen, what we do about it.
And so we're going to continue with Diane because she is and give you the ride manager perspective. Oh, also on trails.
Okay, again, being the ride manager for No Frills and the Old Dominion,
And occasionally Fort Valley.
and help with Fort Valley. I'm not the manager of Fort Valley, but anyway, one of your biggest ounce of prevention as far as having trouble on trail is coming to the ride meeting and listening, paying attention. And probably the most important thing is paying attention to when a ride manager talks about trail marking. Every ride manager does it differently. It may be that a ride manager has arrows up for every turn, and they don't do double ribbons. Some use the same color ribbon as the trail loop, and they hang double ribbons for the turn. For the Old Dominion, two red ribbons along with the loop ribbon to let warning you that there's a turn coming.
Uh-oh. I think we lost Diane.
That's what it looks like.
Or you want
you
to
wanna
pick it up?
I'm
Yeah,
back
I'll
on.
just pick it up.
I'm back on.
Okay, we got her.
I'm here.
Okay, good.
Yes, Terry, please pick up if I get cut off again.
Sounds good.
Like the Old Dominion, we mark everything on the right. We will tell you at a ride meeting if there's an area of trail that's marked on the left. Listening to that, and then whether you write it on your hand or write it on your arm or write it on your rider card, what the color of the loops are, that is critical to making sure you don't get lost on trail. Most rangers are either going to give you their phone number. At the Old Dominion, our phones don't work, so we give you the base camp phone number, which somebody manages the whole time of the ride. So if you get lost out on trail, or you suddenly don't have any ribbons, or you get hurt, having that number programmed into your own phone so that you can call base camp and give information so that we can get help to you. That is, at a lot of rides, there is self-service, and a manager will give you their number to call directly if something happens out on trail. And then the most important thing is when you do start riding the ride is ride it ribbon to ribbon, ride it loop by loop. So when you leave on that first loop, know that it's 13 miles, know that it's red and white stripes. Usually during the ride briefing, we're going to tell you how much water is out on trail. Be looking for those water holes so that you can let your horse drink. And then probably the last and most important is during the ride briefing, we're going to talk about the terrain. We're going to tell you that the first loop is mostly double wide trail and one climb, and the second loop is up and over North Mountain. And so you want to ride to the condition of each of those loops and plan accordingly. And then as Lonnie was talking about watching the footing, move out when it's a nice trail, walk when it's rocks. If you're trotting through the rocks, you're asking for shoes to get ripped off. If it's mud and boggy, go through that carefully so you don't lose your shoe. A lot of prevention can happen if you get familiar with the trail, really listening to at the ride meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Diane. We're going to move on and go to another quote. Again, this is from that same Facebook post where I advertised it, but I thought this was brilliant when I read it. Endurance riding brings out all of the shit can go wrong with your horse, shit that can go wrong and that you never even thought of. And that is so true. It's an essential part of the thrill of endurance riding. For me personally, this is what keeps my brain happy. It's the learning of endurance. I'm honored to be able to do this panel with these other panelists, and I myself sit here and take notes and learn from it. You're always learning in this sport, and it's wonderful. And so we're going to go down back to Terry, talking about things that can go bump on the trail.
So we've given you a lot of discussion about prevention. And for all the things that you prepare for and all the lists that you make and all the things that you check, stuff still will happen. It's just the way of this sport. It's going to find you, and how you deal with it will make the difference between it being a horrible situation or one that you'll just roll right through and learn from. So you can have lameness or medical issues that happen to you while you are out on trail. If you step in a hole, hit a rock, etc., or your horse just gets a cramp, that can sort of put a damper on your day. If you carry a few extra things with you, and we're not recommending that you have a steamer trunk worth of things wherever you go. However, a few little items well packaged in your saddle can give you some assistance so that you can get from where you are in your situation to a road where somebody can come pick you up or to the next vet check. So vet wrap is a really easy one, and it accommodates all sorts of things, human and equine. You can use it for wounds. You can use it to make an ill-fitting boot fit better. We always carry either a maxi pad or an infant diaper. Will suppress bleeding on, again, both humans or an equine. Antibiotic ointment or some sort of medical ointment. Desitin is one of the most widely used products among endurance riders. Patty Carey once said, and we've quoted her a bunch here, but she once said that an enterprising crew member can make a lot of money late in 100 if they have extra tubes of Desitin, because it solves all evils. A little roll of duct tape or a part of a roll of duct tape can help you with some tragedies, dramas. And I found on Amazon, not to give a pitch for them, but that's where I found them, Velcro straps that are, reusable, removable. They can put things back together that otherwise, wouldn't be together. So for instance, if you have a maxi pad that you want to wrap around a leg, you can easily and quickly put a Velcro strap on it, and then you don't have to wrestle with a roll of vet wrap. Back rub, they happen. You start getting sweat, salt, sand, grit, all that stuff you pick up on trail. Your saddle starts shifting, even the slightest little bit from going up and downhill, and you can get a little girth rub. My healthy little chubby guy has a tendency to get rubs in his own skin when he gets moving. His little chubby armpits start rubbing on each other. And so having, that's where our Desitin comes in. And I also offer him a change of a girth cover at every vet check. That's a really small little piece of equipment, easy to put in a tack box, and have that ready for him. If you're doing a long day, 50 to 100 miles, and it's hot out, changing that saddle pad is a nicety. Whether it prevents rubs or whatever, I don't know, but it definitely makes them feel better. Kind of like putting dry socks on when you've got nasty feet. The shoe thing, Diane covered really well. Having your own farrier put the type of horse shoes that your horse is used to wearing in your box. The farriers at the Old Dominion rides in particular are unbelievable. They are super professional and they work quickly. However, on certain loops, you may have a line. You get to a vet check and there are 4 or 5 horses lined up and you've got a 40-minute hold or a 45-minute hold. You don't necessarily want to risk that they don't have the time that they need to get your horse's shoe back on and get you out within your time frame. So having the shoe that's already fitted makes their life a whole lot easier. Carrying a multi-tool or a hoof pick, if your horse starts to bobble a little, it may not be that your shoe is coming off. It may just be that there's a rock or something stuck in that shoe. And trying to dig that out with your fingers, not so fun. So having a small little hoof pick available to you or something that you can pry that out with will make things go so much better. Boots, Lanny covered it, carry boots. There's a lot of packs and straps and ways to get it onto your saddle, and be aware of whether or not your front feet and back feet are the same size. That's kind of a thing. you can out there find a rock with your name on it. It has been said that on every trail, there is a rock with your name on it. The question is whether or not you will find it. And the chances of you finding it are higher if you go running through those rocks. Some horses are more adept at that, more goat-like than others. Some horses tend to move through rocks more like a hippopotamus. So know what your horse's capabilities are before you go zipping through terrain and risk putting yourself in that situation.
Okay, thank you, Terry. And now we're gonna talk about getting lost on trail. And again, Diane is gonna talk about this as from a ride manager perspective.
Okay, now you listened really well at the ride meeting and you get out there, and I've actually had this happen at a ride that I was riding at where there was trail vandalism and ribbons were pulled down. But let's say you get lost. All of a sudden, there are no ribbons. At the Old Dominion, we hang a ribbon every 10th of a mile. So if you've gone a half a mile and you haven't seen a ribbon, first thing you want to do is stop. Note where you are. Look for landmarks, especially if you go back and you don't find a ribbon and you're going to be calling into camp. Being able to say that you just passed a water tower or that you just came through a Forest Service gate, things like that are very helpful for us to figure out where you are, to be able to get you back on trail or come find you. But probably the most important thing is to turn around and retrace your steps till you find the last ribbon. Then stand at that ribbon and look around and make sure you haven't missed a turn ribbon that told you were supposed to go to the right or to the left. But if you call in, probably the most important thing, and this is if you get lost on trail, if you get injured on trail, is don't wander off the trail. Find that last ribbon and then stay there. Either a rider's going to come by and then you can follow them, or you will be able, we can figure out where you're at and then guide you in. But if you start wandering off trail and you actually go off trail and we're searching for you on trail, then it's going to be much harder to find you. Carrying a safety whistle, especially if we're out searching for you, being able to blow that whistle to help us orient where you're at and follow the sound of the whistle, as long as it's not echoing off the mountain. And then again, if you've got phone service, then you'll be able to call the number we've given you. But if you don't have phone service, stay where you are, because you're eventually, especially at the Old Dominion rides and many other rides, there's either spotters on trail, there's radio people in each of the vet checks. And when you don't show up, or you don't go by the spotter and you are in the middle of the pack and now the turtle has come by, then the ride manager is now going to know you're missing, and we're going to know to look for you between the two spotters. So it's critical that you stay put for us to come find you.
Okay. All right. And I think with that's getting lost, we're going to go on to tack and equipment failure, still with Diane.
Okay. And this does happen. Your reins break, your cheek strap breaks. So even though you did all that pre-ride checking and you examined all your equipment, your horse puts its head down to graze, the rein slides down its neck because you were taking a drink, and they step through the reins and they break the reins. If you are prepared, again, we're talking about what you carry on the saddle. And like Terry said, we're not talking about carrying a steamer trunk, but if you have just a few items, you can fix almost anything. So one of those favorite things to have in your saddlebag is baling twine. Baling twine will fix almost anything. I have actually seen somebody's stirrup break and baling twine was put right on through the stirrup strap and created a stirrup to get into the next vet check. I actually carry extra, if you have the quick clip reins that clip onto your headstall, I have one of them hooked right onto one of the hooks of my saddle, because horses love to rub. And if they rub and they break that snap, But if you don't carry one of those, again, the baling twine works great to tie the rein on. Carrying carabiners, Terry talked about the Velcro straps. They work for tack equipment. They work for strapping things onto the horses. Zip ties, paracord bracelets that can be untangled, and then you've got the paracord to use as a rope to fix things. So that is, if you have those things in your bag, you can fix almost anything, to include a broken billet strap to get you into the next vet check. Then if you are, a Boy Scout, Girl Scout, and you're well prepared, I carry in my gearbox extra cheek straps. After Pat Olive lost or broke her billet strap, I actually carry 2 leather billet straps, a long and a short, in mine. And Terry talked about duct tape. Duct tape can fix a cracked stirrup. It can fix a lot of things out on trail. But again, if you carry that extra girth, you carry the extra saddle pads, you carry billet straps, carry pieces to your head stall that once you get back into the vet check, you can fix it or help somebody else to fix theirs when their things break. It can really save your ride. Being prepared with those few things to fix almost anything out on trail.
All right, so now we go to one of my favorite things in endurance, and that is suck it up, Buttercup. And I'm going to give a shout out. On the resource page, you will see a friend of mine, Katie Terra, owns Harley Horse, and you can buy that logo and a t-shirt. She can give you a blanket, but suck it up, Buttercup. You do a lot of that in endurance, don't you, Terry?
Yes, you do. Some days are just not your day. You wake up, you've got a headache, a stomach ache, a sore foot, whatever. And most of us know that we've signed up for an endurance sport. Endurance reads strenuous. Like, we're not just walking along, we're doing hard things, and we are stressing our bodies and we're stressing ourselves mentally. So even if you've hydrated and eaten the right things and gotten your sleep and you're wearing the right stuff, again, things do happen. So there are times when you're just not having a good day, and it's time to say, I'm done. However, we sort of assess, are you really on the cusp where you need to say no, or is it an opportunity to suck it up? On a particularly not fun section of trail, I had a first time Old Dominion rider climbing behind me who was whining the entire time. It was hot, the hill was tall, it was too long, and as soon as I get to the next vet check, I'm gonna call for the trailer. And I said, why? At that point, you are 3/4 of the way through the ride. And she was like, I am? I was like, yes, if you've done that much and your horse still feels good, put your big girl pants on and do it. So she ended up finding me after the fact, holding her buckle that she got because she sucked it up. And she was so proud of herself for doing it. So ask yourself a couple of times before you throw in the towel if you really need to throw in the towel. Things you can do to help yourself if you're not quite feeling it. Small little packages of different pharmaceuticals can help, again, in this little pack that you carry on your saddle. Tylenol, Tums and Pepto. I will say that I hear often when you start electrolyting for rides and you're not used to it, certain electrolytes can upset your stomach. So again, kind of like your clothing and your equipment, test it in your training rides before you just start cranking electrolytes on the day of the ride and make yourself sick. But if your belly's getting upset, having those things on the saddle are very helpful. Capstick is kind of like Desitin. it can heal or fix a lot of things. If anything's getting raw, slather some chapstick on it. Benadryl, kind of, you know, every time summer rolls around, ground bees become a concern. So having a little Benadryl in your pack will help out with if you're getting stung. Electrolytes, you know, keep them going in all day.
Carrie,
Band-Aids for a rub.
Carrie, can I interject? If you know you're allergic to bees, if you know you're allergic to bees, carry your EpiPen, carry the Benadryl, and if you have a prescription for prednisone, carry the first dose on the saddle. It can actually save your ride. I can attest to that at least 4 rides. I'm highly allergic. I made it through the ride because I had all 3 of those things in my saddle and took them immediately when I got stung. So if you know you're allergic, carry that in your saddle.
Well, the other thing that's helpful about a situation like that, if you do have a health concern that you're aware of, and you choose to ride with a group of people, you may want to share, not that you have to blast your stuff out to the world to know, but in the instance of I'm allergic to bees, you might just want to say, hey guys, I have my EpiPen here. If something were to happen, you know, it's in my pack. That's not totally private information, but it's helpful to people that are with you so they can help you. Rubs and blisters happen. They happen often. You start to sweat and you know, rain happens, weather happens, and things start to rub. Clean, dry socks help with that. Band-Aids for that. Desitin chapstick for that. And you have to evaluate, you know, is this really something that is worth stopping my day for? Or, you know, am I going to feel better about, you know, getting to the end, and then I can fix it. And that's a personal thing, making that decision. Having that dry socks, dry shirt, you know, a little something to make you more comfortable in your gearbox at the vet check makes a big difference. A dry shirt late in 100 is one of the best feelings ever. I'm going back to Desitin. I'm going to make my pitch for that product. Basically, you know, butt cream, whatever brand you want to use is fine, but man, that fixes a whole lot of things. Maintain your eating and drinking. One of my worst low points at a ride had to do with I over electrolyted, ended up on my hands and knees begging for mercy. And at this point, it was like 72 miles in. My horse was in great shape. Yeah, right. I had to figure it out. So this is one of the wonderful, wonderful things about the endurance community. If you are in trouble, ask for help. Do not have pride. Be humble and be open about what you're experiencing. And people come out of the woodwork. I had people offering me, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you tried these things? So after about an hour into this event, I was, all of a sudden, it was a miracle. I was healed and I was able to finish my first 100. So don't be ashamed to tell somebody when you're struggling, because this community is very accepting of all of us and our drama and our weaknesses, and we're very willing to offer assistance if we can. So definitely take advantage of whatever advice you can get in the moment. So the note here is about taking care of yourself, especially if you decide to bump up the distance. It does make a difference. There's a big difference between 50 miles and 25 miles. There's a big difference between 100 miles and 50 miles. And really the only way to know how you're going to do is to do it. So you might find things happening to you later in a longer event that you're not used to experiencing. And this is where asking for help and reaching out to other riders can get you some really good advice. If there is any chance that you would be on trail after dark, bring a headlamp or have reflectors or a glow stick with you. You know, if you've signed up for the 25 and you're starting at 7 in the morning, the chances of you being out in the dark are pretty slim. But, you know, depending on the time of year, some 50s might keep you out there after dark. Regardless of what your plan is and how fast you think you're going to ride it, you should probably have a little flashlight in your pack as well.
Okay, thank you, Terry. So now we are actually going to go to lions and tigers and bears and other bugaboos and things that happen on
Yeah,
trail.
so yeah, I'm supposed to start on the beginning of this one. The most common thing that will happen to you is that your horse has some random behavior on trail that puts you in an unstable position, and unplanned dismounts happen. Usually in a new environment when excitement is happening, and you know, we tend to ride a lot of things that are either all Arab or mixed with Arab. Either way, they're athletes and they've got a lot of energy, and sometimes they take it out on spooking at things for no good reason. Because we know this, it doesn't hurt to train your horse, stay with you when you come off. As a kid, my riding instructor always had me do emergency dismounts. In the middle of a lesson, she would just say, emergency dismount, 1, 2, 3, and I had to be on the ground. So we try to practice some of that. As I've gotten older, it does make it a little more difficult to be on the ground in 1, 2, 3, but having practice at making my horse stay with me when I come off has been very, very helpful. It's occurred a couple of times and my horse hasn't left me. So it's been really good, because that adds to your poor day if you have to go hunting for an animal. Even though it is uncomfortable to experience your horse acting out and being afraid, you should still put yourselves in situations around new and uncomfortable things on a regular basis, so that when they run into something unusual on a trail, they know that they can trust you, and your reactions will be smaller and smaller the more often you do it. So it is frequent that we use multi-use trails in this sport. So hikers are a thing. People don't look like people when they've got a big pack on their back and they're carrying a huge walking stick. And for some reason, hikers naturally want to hide behind trees when they see horses coming, which makes the situation even worse. So advocate for yourself. First of all, ask the hiker, you know, how their day is going. When you get a voice coming back out of that monster that's hiding behind a tree, your horse will relax. But being around bicycles help a lot. It doesn't always cure your horse of being comfortable with bicycles, but at least they've seen them and they know how to behave, or close to how to behave. I still have one that's not really good. But, you know, people with baby strollers love to come up and, you know, run their small child right up under your horse's legs. So speaking to those people and letting your horse see that unusual thing, very, very helpful. Just random things that people tend to avoid, try to get your horse to walk up to it. So your first reaction when you're training and your horse is spooking at something or making the scary eyes at something, walk them up to it. Go slowly, breathe deep, and let them know that you're not going to let anything on trail eat them. That will help you when it comes to finding those things during a competition. Again, with the, if you come off, don't leave. Your horse may leave. We hope they don't, but you stay where you are. And that way someone will come along and find you and know that we at least have one part of the team. Again, if your horse will either stay with you or circle back to you once they've had their yah-yah moment, that makes your life a lot easier. But don't get back on and keep moving because you don't know if you're concussed or have some other issues. So stay where you are.
Okay, and with that, we're gonna have Terry stop about talking about the horse on trail. Terry is gonna start, but then Lonnie is gonna continue.
Behaviors are both medical behaviors, which Lonnie will address, but behaviors that are unusual of your horse typically happen at the start of a ride. Things are very spun up in a ride camp on the morning of a ride. So you have to make a choice of whether you are a confident and competent enough rider to gut it out, or if you would like to go for the better part of valor and say, you know what, this is a little more than we're used to. Maybe we should get away from the crowd, circle around a little bit, have a little, come to Jesus meeting over in the corner, talk to each other, and then wait for the big part of the crowd to go and have a much gentler entree onto the trail. So behavior that is not medical, but is excitement, is better off removed from the situation for a moment and calmed down before you continue. Lonnie,
Okay.
do you want to take up medical related behaviors?
Yes, and actually, I do want to go back to what you were just talking about, or what you talked about earlier with the rider, because I've been doing this for 45 years and I'm still dumber than a rock. I learned stuff every single ride that is astounding that I managed to get my clothes on in the morning. So we just went down to the Florida ride, to the Greenway ride over January 1st, and it was a warm day, and we were very conscious of the heat for the horses, and I thought I was taking care of myself, and I ate and drank as I always do. I wasn't taking the ride totally seriously because it was, I'm not gonna say it was just a 50, it was a 50, but it wasn't 100, and it wasn't that hot. It was super, super humid, and it was in the 80s, upper 80s, but it wasn't that bad. So I thought I got this. So I just had water on my saddle. When I'm not taking things real seriously, I just keep water on my saddle. I don't use electrolytes. And the first 2 loops were 20 miles, and the horses were doing great, and I felt totally normal. And on the first loop, I started seeing black spots, and I thought, that's kind of funky because I've never done that before. I felt totally normal. I felt great. And then a little bit later, and this is we used to do ultra running, so I started getting cold chills, even though it was 85 degrees. I get cold chills on my arms when my sodium gets low. And I thought, I feel totally normal. I feel great. And I'm chugging along, getting these black spots, or get a little bit normal, a little bit more. And so I mentioned to Kathy, who's riding next to me, I said, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that I feel 100% normal, but this is what's happening. And she stopped. And she says, and she called me names, but she says, you are dehydrated. I said, I'm not dehydrated. I've been drinking. Well, I'm drinking water, and I've been eating, and so I didn't have the right stuff on the saddle. So she rides up right next to me, and she carries in her Camelback electrolytes. So she just passes me the tube, and we're riding next to each other. I mean, and I felt completely normal, but there were a lot of black spots going on, and she tanked me up on her electrolyte solution, and she handed me some electrolytes, and by golly, the black spots and the cold chills went away. Okay, I'm that stupid. Is that I just was not prepared. I mean, so I probably would have been fine going on. I mean, I probably would have been fine coming in because I was not stressing out. But again, as Terry's saying, you're not taking care of your horse. So I've only been riding for almost 50 years, and this is still something that I screwed up. So that's sort of your version, the human version of metabolic, not quite right, ain't doing right. Don't keep going until things get bad. So what they always say, what the vets always say is your horse eating, drinking, peeing, and pooping? And I always figure the peeing and the pooping comes after the eating and drinking. If you're not eating and drinking, nothing's coming out. And so the most important thing, again, I keep focusing on this, is if you normally, looking at this picture right here, if you normally, 2 of you stopped and walked over to the edge of the road, and the one horse put its head down and started grazing, and your horse doesn't, is that normal for it? He never eats when I'm on his back, or this is not quite right. Start looking for things that are slightly different. Like if the other horses trot off and your horse continues to walk, If that's not normal, think about that. Or if he starts stopping going up the hills, if a horse stops going down a hill, it's usually because something hurts. Like your saddle is not cooperating with your horse, your girth is not cooperating, his hocks are not cooperating. But for some of us, our horses, if they, and when I'm talking stopping, it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm so bored, I don't want to do this. It's like they stop and will not go. For my horses, that's usually, okay, there is a metabolic issue here. And actually sometimes, one time in one of my horses, it was hindgut ulcers that had just reared their little ugly heads. And once I corrected that, the horse stopped going up the hills. But if things change that you normally don't see, then you need to rethink things. And again, down the same ride in Florida, I took a horse down there. It was only his second 50, and I just wanted him to finish. So I'm going to be quiet and see what happens. And he did the first 2 loops. And again, it was 85 degrees and super humid. And we were, towards the back of the pack because I just wanted him to finish. And on the second vet check, there were 2 vet checks. He stopped eating halfway through the vet check. He dove into his food, but then he sort of stopped eating halfway through his vet check and kind of was hanging there. And I thought, not good. And so I said, well, let me see what's going to do. So we tacked him back up, went back out on the trail. And at the first water tank, which is about a mile out, he didn't drink. And he normally drinks more than all the other horses in the entire ride. So I said, okay, I need to not do this anymore. I need to stop doing what I'm doing. And it has never, so I have at times overridden my horses. I have at times tried to keep up with other people. I have asked them to do things that they're not quite ready to do. And if you stop doing what you're doing, either sit on the ground for 20 minutes until they eat grass, or get off on your little 2 feeties and start walking, or walk on the horse. I have never had that not work. It always brings them back. Stop doing what you're doing. So we go out on the 3rd loop, and it's still 85 degrees and super humid. And I'm riding with a friend, and the horses trailer together. They came from Virginia together. So I said, I'm going to walk him. I have gobs of time. I have 5 hours to do this last 10-mile loop. I'm totally fine. So I'm going to walk him in. I'm going to sit on his back, but I'm going to walk him in, and you go on ahead because there's no reason for you to sit here and walk. So she trots off. And the key number 3 was my horse didn't try to follow her. He did not whinny. He did not squirm. He just said, bye-bye. And I thought, this is a good thing. I'm just going to walk. And so we walked, it was a 10-mile loop, and we walked the last 10-mile loop. And after about a mile or 2, he started perking up, he started jigging. And I'm like, we got time. We got time. Why should I reheat you again? Why should I let you get all toasty again? So he was pretty perky, but he never whinnied for her. He never called for her. And I've never separated from her before. I've never said, you go on ahead and I will hold him back. I didn't have to hold him back. He was just like, you go on, honey. I'm going to walk. And so I did walk him in the last 10 miles, and he was sprightly and happy, and he cooled down because I stopped trotting through the sand at 85 miles at 85 degrees. So, but again, the key was he didn't drink. And when she left, he didn't say goodbye. I mean, it was so those are 2 very, very huge warning signs for me, is that I don't want to stand there, because if I stand there and doo-doo happens, it's not going to be pretty. He's going to, they continue generating heat even when they're standing there. So I thought, I'm going to at least keep walking on the trail, keep going down the trail. But that's, again, slowing down to accommodate for heat, humidity, or the trail, or whatever's happening. But if things if your horse loses interest, what we always say is, if your horse is still spooking, he ain't dead yet. I mean, if your horse, nearly dumps you off when a bite comes around the corner, he's probably okay. If a bite comes around the corner and your horse does not respond, you better pay really, really close attention to what you're doing. Think about whether you should change anything. If you come in, and again, the vets, back in the 70s and 80s, before most of you were born, we always thought the vets were the police. We didn't want to talk to them. We didn't want to tell them what was happening because they would just pull us. And that is so not true for the past 30 or 40 years. The vets are there. They want you to finish. They want you to complete the ride. And if there's anything they know that can help you finish the ride, they'll do that. So if you say, I'm a little concerned, he's not eating right, he's not drinking right, or he won't do this or he won't do that, then they might be able to have some suggestions, or at least they'll say, well, go back and do this. Give him some calcium. Okay, here's my other really, really dumb thing. I've done so many dumb things. I was riding the Old Dominion 100 a few years ago, and I was riding one of our best horses, who is not my normal, I'm not his normal rider. And we came into Bucktail, which is the 46-mile point, and he felt pretty good. I mean, we were moving. We had plenty of time. He was trotting along. He came, and but I'm not his regular rider. I weigh significantly more than his regular rider. And we came to the water tank at the vet check, and he didn't pulse down immediately. And normally he drops like a rock. He did not pulse down, and I actually had to cool him down, which I never have to do. And I thought, did I do anything? No, I just thought, he's never, ever had to be cooled down. So I took him over to the vet, and he promptly flopped over on the side and lay in the grass. And I thought, well, that's embarrassing. And Patty Carey was crewing for us at the point, because the horse just flopped over and lay on the grass while the vet's staring at me. And Patty Carey says, look at him. He's got muscle fasciculations. His muscles were tremoring. She says, he is low on calcium. I'm at this point so freaked out. My brain is not engaging. So she says, he is low on calcium. I've seen that before. So we pick him up. We take him over to the truck where she knows where absolutely everything is. We pull out the calcium, the CMPK, and we give him a whole bottle of CMPK. And it was like watering a flower. He went, poop. He was totally normal, started to eat, started to drink, was great. I mean, what happened is that he was carrying a lot more weight. Okay, maybe 100 more pounds than he was normally used to on a hot and humid day. And I wasn't just factoring that in, that this was a lot more work than he's used to. So he burned through a lot more calcium going over that trail. When we gave him the calcium, he started eating and drinking. We went to the vet. He did everything. He got all A's. He was great. We rested him. I gave him an extra half hour. I went back out on the trail before my brain kicked in. And I thought, what the doodad am I doing? I have a horse here who's super low calcium, and I'm going to go out for 54 more miles of the Old Dominion Trail. So I brought him back. That was a rider option because he looked good. But I thought, if I've already burned up all the calcium he has in his body in the first 46 miles, today's not my day. I need to stop, think, engage brain. But again, the first thing that he did is that we had to cool him. And since we've never had to cool that horse. So I should have known right then, before he flopped over in front of the vet, that I was doing something wrong. I need to think about this. But if things go wrong, if you start thinking that I need to I don't know what's happening, I don't know what's going on, don't keep doing what you're doing. Either walk your horse, like there was another rider several years later that I was crewing for, and he came into the Bucktail vet check, which seems to be our bugaboo, which is a 46-mile, and the horse wouldn't eat at the vet check. And he passed all his other things. And he said, what should I do? And I said, this horse has done a bazillion hundreds. So walk. I mean, you don't walk on your feet, walk on your horse and walk. Don't just say, I'm going to walk for 10 minutes and see how it goes. Commit to walking for an hour. I'm serious. Commit to walking for an hour or 2 hours. And I have never had that not revive a horse, because you're backing off on the stress. They're still moving. So they're not sitting there pooling heat. You're still going to water. You're still getting down the trail. But I've never had that not work with a horse. And so the horse came into Big 92 and was great, felt terrific, because he'd had a break in the middle when he was just overcooking. Just things were going harder than he should, and he needed to back off. So either getting off and leading them for an hour, and commit. Don't say, I'm going to go for 10 minutes and see what happens. No, commit. Say, I'm going to walk till he starts eating again. I'm going to walk till he takes a huge drink at the next creek I come to. Because that allows them to re-equilibrate, to have all their electrolytes get back to, of course, in the meantime, you're also giving electrolytes if appropriate, but you're allowing them to re-equilibrate and say, okay, I'm no longer tapped out. You've allowed me to get back to a normal state, and I'm willing to negotiate again. And I've actually never had that not work if you're either on foot or in the saddle.
Fabulous. Okay, now Lonnie mentioned about talking to our vets. This is developed by a wonderful endurance vet that we have, Art King, and it's some good information.
So what he's talking about here is performing a vet check on your own horse when you're out on the trail. And that's something that the vets always say is if you can, you should, ideally everyone should learn to use a stethoscope. And it's, number one, you can get a stethoscope anywhere. You can get them at Walgreens for $6.95. You can get them online for lots of money, but then you lose it, then you feel bad. But in our truck or our trailer, we probably have 10 stethoscopes just hanging on the side of all of our trailers because they're cheap and you never want to have to look for one. but anybody, if you don't know how to take a pulse, it's so easy. I mean, a heart monitor is fine, but heart monitors are so wrong. Sorry, they're so wrong. They're delayed, they're slow, they're fine for kind of puttering along, seeing if you're okay, but they don't give you the actual truth. And so if you carry a stethoscope with you and you think your horse is not, things are going south, things are not going the way they should, then get off and do your own vet check right there on the spot. And so we always say do a cardiac recovery index, because again, as a review, the idea with the cardiac recovery index is that it's a little stress test to see what's going on. It's totally dependent on what's normal for your horse. Is again, this horse that I used that I took to Florida that was overheating. And I love the fact that Art and Nick have taught the vets, at least on the East Coast, about humidity. Is this horse is very big and he's very black and he sucks up heat. And so I took him to the first vet check, and his cardiac recovery index, your cardiac recovery index is supposed to start at whatever number you come in at. Say it's 60. And then you take the horse and you trot it down for 125 feet, and you turn around and you trot back for 125 feet. And 1 minute from the time you took the first pulse. So it doesn't matter how fast you trotted or how slow you trotted. It's 1 minute from the time you took the first pulse, you take the second pulse. And in a perfect world, it's the same or maybe up 4 beats. So if you started at 60 and then you went down, you trotted down and back, and you came back and 60 seconds later, you take it again, it should be at 60, 64, something. Some of these fit Arabians, it might be 56, it might be 52. And so on these big heavy horses, at least Art and Nick have trained everybody, is that I brought my horse into the vet and he was totally great. And he came in at 52, did his CRI, and he finished at 68. And all the vet said to me was, you need to cool him. You know, she didn't say, oh my gosh, this is terrible, we must recheck him. He's close to death's door. He's just a 1,500-pound horse. So she knew that his CRI isn't as valid as everybody else's. But if you have a stethoscope with you and you say, it's just 40 paces down and 40 paces back, I don't know if my horse is doing okay, I'm going to take his pulse, I'm going to jog him in hand down on this trail and turn around or just jog in a straight line. You don't have to turn around and come back and take the pulse again. If you take the pulse again and it's still 62, then you say, okay, well, he's not at death's door. Now what else do I need to look at? But if you trot him down and back and he's at 80 and he doesn't do that, then you think I need to do some serious reevaluating here. But so you can do your own personal vet check out there on the trail to say, he is giving me a line of BS because he's bored of this and it's mile 65 and our hearts are not in this anymore. Or you can say he is not doing well and I need to reconsider. And that doesn't mean you have to stop. If the numbers are wrong, it doesn't mean you must panic and stop and call for a trailer, because number one, you're probably out of range anyway. But look at all the things that the vet normally looks like. And so again, eyes, you all know your eyes. You know if your horse is looking at you, you know if your horse is looking at a kayak, that's a really bad sign. But if your horse is kind of puckered up and dribbled up, that's bad. I mean, it's a little, sure, capillary refill, jugular refill, that's all fine. That's not as critical for us. And the interesting thing, of course, about skin pinch is that the older the horse is, the more wrinkly, just like all of us, the more wrinkly your skin is. So skin pinch is less exciting. If he's a 16-year-old gelding, and if at mile 10 you pinch the skin up, it would just stay there till next December. That's normal for him. So skin pinch varies as far as each horse goes. But what your horse's normal heart rate is. Gut sounds are very critical, but again, a little fuzzy because gut sounds depend on how much you're eating. So if you take a horse and you're on an endurance ride and the first loop is 22 miles and you do it pretty quickly, so you do it in like 2.5 hours, you're not going to have any gut sounds. You will have 0 gut sounds because your horse you didn't eat. You didn't stop and eat during that time. So there was no food going in and probably not a whole lot of water going in. So even though the horse is bright and alert and perky, the vet's going to say, I don't hear any gut sounds. Well, need to get some food into it. I mean, if the horse is eating, you take the horse to the vet and it's eating all the grass and you jog down to the end of your cardiac recovery index and the horse plunks its head on the ground and starts eating, you're okay. It just needs to get some food in. But if if you're riding on the trail and you've made it to the top of the mountain and your horse stops and won't go anymore and is kind of hanging there, you think, uh-oh, and you have your handy dandy stethoscope, or you just stick your ear on the side of his flank. If you hear gut sounds, you think, okay, that's a positive sign. If you hear nothing, you say, I need to be very tuned in to what I do next, to what I don't think I'm going to run into the next vet check and see if I make it. I'm going to stop, or I'm going to whatever it takes, but you're going to say, I need to take this seriously, because if you go down to anal tone, and most of us don't routinely check anal tone, but if you have a herd of horses who won't kick the stuffing out of you, walk around and get really familiar with anal tone, because what we do when we're checking anal tone is you pick up the tail and you give it a little pinch, and normally it goes wink, and it blinks at you. And to me, the anal tone is just the back end of the guts. I mean, it's still the part of your intestine, so it's mimicking exactly what your intestines are doing. So if you pinch the horse's little wrinkle, little raisin, and it blinks at you, then you know their gut is moving and it's responding and it's reacting to what's happening in there. If you walk around the back of your horse and it's either got a fever of 103 or it's exhausted, they don't do this when they're tired. Things have gone south in a hurry, and you look at their butthole and it's kind of partially open and just kind of sitting there. That's what his intestines are doing. Is they're just kind of partially open, just sitting there. You can see his intestines. You can't look in there for them, but that is your mirror for what's going on. So, because my partner just went out to look at a horse a couple nights ago. It had a fever of 105. It had pneumonia, and it was not doing well. And she said the thing that concerned her the most is she walked around behind him and his little butthole was about this big, as big as an apple. And she says, that to me is a bad sign. Of course, you don't say that to owner. You know your horse is going to croak, but she says that's a key to me, that all the systems are not working. And so that's why we look at anal tone. And it's good to teach your horse, because a lot of people say, I can't even safely take a temperature. Well, please teach your horse to take its temperature, because you're going to need that at some point, especially if we go back up to the next one. But that's why anal tone is important, is that it's a reflection of what's going on in the gut. And I like this. So when Art says rectal temperatures, and I Googled this, I typed into my little googly thing. This is a brave man, because he says he wants a temperature to be less than 38.6. Now I know Saskatchewan knows this. If you Googly that thing, it says 101.5. If I had a horse that was 101.5, I'd be calling a doctor. Okay, that's a fever. And then over here, he says you get real worried if it gets to 40.5. My Googly thing says that's 105. Okay, my numbers would be a little bit lower than Art's. I'd be pretty excited. But so a normal horse, if you know what your horse's temperature is, you go out there in the field and it's probably 97 to 98 all the time. Maybe it's 99 all the time. And every horse has a temperature, just like every person has a temperature. So and normally when you ride them, it goes up. It goes up to maybe, but these Arabians, it might go up to 101. It might go up to 102. On these heavier horses, it will definitely go up to 102 or 103. When you're getting up, then you're not going to have a thermometer with you out on the trail if you're doing a vet check on your horse. But if by some miracle you knew that your horse is at 103, you'd say, I need to stop what I'm doing. Because when their temperature gets that high, they cannot recover. Their pulse cannot go down. They feel like a flower that has been exposed to a heat gun. I mean, they need to stop what they're doing. You need to get them in the shade, or if you can find a creek, you need to stand them in the creek and just stand there, even if it's just up to their coronary bands. Back in the 70s, before you guys were born, but I was told by a vet that all the blood, I don't know if this is true or not, I believed anything when I was 16 years old, but all the blood in the horse's body goes through their coronary band every 7 minutes. I believe this. It sounds reasonable to me, but it's like putting your wrists under cold water. If your horse is hot, or you're on the trail and it's a super hot day and you're thinking, I don't know what to do, we are hot. If you can find a creek where the water is above their coronary bands and you stand them there for 10 minutes, you figure all the blood in their body has been exposed to that cold water. That's got to help. It's like putting your wrists, you wouldn't think that cooling your wrists off would cool you down, but it's a miracle how that happens. So anyway, so what he's saying with this chart, do a screenshot of it, and then she'll make the PowerPoint available to you too. But this is just so when you're on the trail, if you think the doo-doo's hitting the fan, do your own vet check. If everything comes out green, everything's on your left side, you think you are being a fraud. You don't want to do this anymore. Let's negotiate. Let's just get home. If he's in the yellow range, you think I need to change what I'm doing. And if he's in the red range, then you need to do something serious, which just means stop doing what you're doing and take this very seriously. It doesn't mean he's going to croak. It just means rethink and get water, get your horse the help it needs to cool down and to rest.
Okay, thank you, Lonnie. So now say you take your horse back to the vet check and they talk, these are pull codes that were found on vet cards. And this
So
is, go on,
yeah, well,
Lonnie, sorry.
the funny thing is that for some reason we're all so anti-pull. I mean, it is hardwired into us to either not get pulled or to not have a pull on our horse's record. We think it's going to affect them at some point later on in life, like as if we're going to sell them. We're going to sell our friend, you know? Oh my God, now it is true. One time somebody wanted me to do a purchase exam on a horse, and we looked up its AERC record, and this is the things you look at. And the horse was a very well-bred horse, and so it won its very first 25 it ever went on. It's won its second 25 it ever went on. It won its first 50 it ever went on. It was pulled for lameness at its second 50. It's won its next 50. It was pulled for lameness at its next. And I'm like, run away. Do not. This horse is too good. It was ridden too hard early on. It now has as many pulls as it does completions. So they listened to its quality and not to its training, and the horse is done. I don't even need to look at it. You don't need to look at it. You can look at its AERC record. But so the rest of us don't do that. That's not how we ride. So if there are many reasons to stop, doing what you're doing on the endurance ride. And again, we try so hard because we think it's going to matter. It doesn't matter. And as Sonia says, you learn when you get pulled. You don't want to learn this, but you learn 30 times. When you finish a ride, it's like, yeah, check. I mean, we're excited. We're thrilled, but you don't remember it like the times when you rode your horse until he was out of calcium and tipped over in front of the vet. I mean, that will stick with me for the rest of my life. And I won't forget what Patty Carey told me. I mean, she says, look, if you see this, do that. So when your horse is found not fit to continue and it's on the vet card, so the obvious one is lame. I mean, in the lameness, there is in the AERC vet guidelines, sure, there's, grade 1 is allowed to continue, grade 2 is allowed to continue under certain circumstances. You don't really care. I mean, if you feel what you find is in your heart is that you can feel your horse's soundness and lameness long before it's visible. And the truth of the matter is if you stop now before it gets serious, sometimes it is something that can be resolved within a day or a week and you're back on the trail. And if you continue on thinking maybe he'll work out of it, it sometimes becomes a longer term proposition. So anyway, so the obvious one is if your horse is not fit to continue, it's because it's lame, you get an L on your rider card. A metabolic is usually, again, just a failure to recover, is for some reason, and there's no one metabolic thing, but it's your metabolic thing is your cardiac recovery is out of whack, your hydration is bad, your gut sounds are non-existent, and or you have muscle fasciculations, your muscles are trembling, or for whatever. But so the horse is not lame, but everything else is starting to shut down. So that would be a metabolic pull. And again, those are, it's always a toss up because every horse is different. You have to know your horse, because there have been times when I have had a horse who just says, I cannot take another step, and their pulse is 44. And I'm like, you are full of patooties. So you have to know your horse. And that's where a heart monitor will help you. I mean, how many times have you been trotting down the trail and you're using as much leg as possible and you're thinking this is not working, and you look down and your heart monitor says 48 and you're thinking, okay, you lying piece of patootie. But so that's where your metabolic comes in, is you have gotten dehydrated enough that your guts are not working anymore, your circulation's not working anymore, and you need to stop. That doesn't mean you need to be treated. It just means you need to stop what you're doing. Overtime, to me, you know what overtime means? It means you took care of your horse. It means you finished the trail, you followed the ribbons, you followed the trail, but you said, I can either push my horse into metabolic a problem, or I am going to go as fast as I think is safe, and I will cross the finish line. I will not have a completion. I will have a healthy horse. And so I don't have any problem. Of course, an overtime is not checked off as a ride finish. But if somebody finishes overtime, particularly if they're riding a horse that's not an Arab, I am so proud of them, because it means they did the ride, but they elected to take care of their horse and to bring them in a condition that was safe for the horse. And then they'll work on getting quicker, and they'll work on either training more in the heat or training more in the mountains, or getting better at getting in the vet checks. I mean, but over time, it's not the kiss of death. It's just a matter of tweaking different things. And surface factors are something hurts, like a girth sore. I mean, they don't get butt rubs, but a surface factor and even a bit sore is not the kiss of death unless it's truthfully hurting the horse. So it's interesting if you ever feel under your horse's breastplate, because like when the vets are working on the horses, one thing we always do is you just run your fingers under the breastplate, and it's interesting how often the horse will flinch when you come down around the edge of the neck, and they use that neck muscle to pull their leg forward, but they flinch because it hurts. So just sort of keep that in mind when you're checking. It's not that the breastplate's not important, but it is. I just need to be conscious of every piece of tack that touches his body. Is he getting a sore under the saddle? And again, of course, the most impressive thing that we've ever heard of is Dawn Hilliard. Again, she was on the Vermont 100, and her horse was getting, she was negotiating with the girth the whole time and changing saddles and doing this. And finally, with 15 miles to go, they said, well, you can't go anymore. And she says, well, I'll just take the girth off. So she rides the last 15 miles of the Vermont 100 on an Arab. And Vermont is very hilly. Vermont goes up and down and sideways and back and forth. And there's 250 little people on their feet running next to you. So she ate dirt a few times, but she rode the last 15 miles of the Vermont 100 without a girth. And her horse was fine because that just eliminated the issue that she had been trying so hard to take care of. So that's the original Suck It Up Buttercup. So she ate dirt, but she finished the ride. She finished the ride. I mean, there's nothing she can't do. So that's your surface factors, is just, whether it's changing your saddle, whether it's changing your bridle, whether it's changing whatever it is. It can also be wounds. It can also be that they've whacked themselves enough, or you just hit something. I mean, you crash into something and it's not a weakness in the horse, but it's got this stick puncture on his arm and it's causing a problem. Disqualified is either you went off trail and you didn't go back to where you were before and correct it. You came in, but you forgot the last loop, or you did something totally wrong. But another way to get disqualified is to be abusive to a horse, or to a participant, or to the staff, or to anybody that makes endurance riding look bad. If you are witnessed screaming at a car on the side of the road and you have a big number on your horse's butt, that does not look good towards endurance riding. So you can be disqualified for being verbally or physically abusive, or just a jerkwad to pretty much anybody around there, in particular to your horse. I mean, if you are unnecessarily beating on or abusing your horse, you can be disqualified. Also, if your horse is dangerous, if your horse is a danger to the people around it, or to the veterinarians, or to the other horses, you can be disqualified. So this comes under basic preparation, is not being a jerkwad and making sure your horse is not a jerkwad either. Rider option, which is, for some reason, it's the one we always want to do. I just want a rider. I want an RO on my card. And so a rider option is that the horse did the vet check, is ready to go, and then all of a sudden you get and the horse is fine. Horse is totally normal, and you get a message that your wife has had a fall and she's in the hospital. And if you continue riding, you will be condemned for the rest of your life by your wife. So you'd best hand your horse to somebody else, jump in the car and go to the hospital. That's a rider option. Or I got at Ride Between the Rivers, Art King, I came in one time and pulled, and Art gave me my rider code was INHFAM. I'm not having fun anymore. Because my horse slam dunked me at about the 10-mile point. She was a little green and she saw something in her little mind behind her, and she bolted, and I could read her mind, and she thought, you know what? I could do this a lot better without you. And she drilled me into the ground, and I got back on, and my friend ponied me. I said, you keep her head in your lap. And she ponied me back to the vet check, and I got off, and I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. And the vet thought that was hilarious. So that's a rider option. Horse was fine, but I'm like, I am not getting on that hoe bag. So that's a rider option. And then, but there are other things. And again, it's just, we try so hard not to do this as riders, but it's really okay. So a rider option is you say my horse is okay, but it did not eat at the vet check. Everything's fine. I mean, its temperature is right, its pulse is right, its gut sound. No, don't talk about the gut sounds, but whatever. But the horse is standing there hanging over the feed bucket. And I said, you know what? I just don't like what I'm seeing. I'm going to pull out. And it's not because you had to go to the hospital to see your wife. It's because your horse you didn't like the way it looked. And the lameness is the same way. And I got nailed with a rider option lame in Florida. And I kind of was huffy about it about 5 years ago, is that the horse was having some off steps out on the trail. And the reason I was huffy about it, because I should have just kept my mouth shut. The horse is having some off steps on the trail. And this is a horse who never is lame, but I knew he'd be okay in the vet. I knew he'd be okay. So I brought him in and I trot him back and forth. He's 100%. He gets all A's. And I tell the vet, I said, well, I'm going to pull him because I'm just not quite tickled with him right now. He took a couple off steps. I got an ROL. I mean, the vet did not see one step of lameness. And I opened my mouth and said he was missing a few steps there. It doesn't matter, but that would be the reason I didn't continue. Had nothing to do with me. It had to do with the horse being lame. I mean, not being perfect. So those are your options there. And it just, as long as the horse is okay, who cares what the pull codes are? But that's why the rider option is rider only. It's not that you don't like your horse. It's that you just heard that the car you've been trying to buy for 3 years has finally come up for auction. You got to go. You know, that's got nothing to do with the horse. If it's got to do with the horse, it's either a metabolic or a lameness.
Thank you, Lonnie. Now we have Terry talking about the start of a ride, and this is the start of an OD ride.
Yeah, so you can see there's a fair amount of excitement happening at that particular start. And this is what I was referring to earlier with behaviors that are not necessarily standard behaviors. Horses get in a herd and things are moving faster than you're used to moving, and they want to go with the herd. So if you are noticing that the behavior is different than what you're used to, you have choices. You can suck it up, gut it out, go with the flow and hope that you'll find your own personal bubble at some point, or you can separate yourself from that madness. There is a ride here on the East Coast that starts out in a wide open field, and it's usually a very well attended ride. So you have lots and lots of horses. Usually a cool morning at the start of the season, and you have some folks who are very, very fit and their horses are fit and ready to charge. And my then 10-year-old was doing that event with my dad, and I was in the 50, they were doing the 25. So we caught up at the end of the day, and I said, so buddy, how was your start? And he said, it was great. We waited until about 5 minutes after the start, walked out nice and slow, and just stepped over the bodies. So this is one of those things where you choose how you are going to manage that fray. Start of the ride is where I have seen some of the most awful accidents based on horse behavior that is not normal for that animal. So please be careful and choose the right way to handle that environment for yourself and for your animal. The weather usually first thing in the morning is cool, they're frisky, so just manage that appropriately. There was one thing that I've been pondering since we've been talking. Another spot that I've seen a couple of accidents, not at the start of the ride, but actually out on trail. When you drop your sponge into moving water, I have seen a number of people drop their sponge off the horse on the upstream side, and the sponge immediately zips its way under the horse, and the horse jumps out of the water, the rider goes off, and it becomes a very dramatic day. So just a note, another ounce of prevention, take a look, see which way the water's flowing, and toss your sponge onto the downside of the way the stream is going.
Okay, thank you, Terry. And then actually, now we're going to talk about outside forces. And we're talking about everything other shit that can happen. Well, that trailer there missing a tire is my trailer. I am known for really bad tire karma. This was actually, I don't remember if this was either at the ride or this is when I got home and I walked out the next day and I said, I'm missing a tire. Things like this happen. And I will tell you that the stress level is very high when things like this happen. So one thing that you want to think about doing is considering there's these on-road insurance programs that will help you. 2 of them are Trail Guard and US Rider. I definitely have my preferences of the 2. If you email me and ask me, I'll be glad to tell you. Also, when Diane was talking about when you're doing the tack check and your checklist, go over your trailer and your rig and make sure that you do a mechanical check on your rig. Check your tires, check the tire pressure. How old are your tires? I hear horror stories of people having way too old tires and they think, well, the tires look fine. It doesn't matter that the tires look fine. I've learned from my father the tires have a certain life. And if you don't replace those tires when they need replaced, you will have problems. Check also fluids. Make sure you have enough DEF. I've heard horror stories of you run out of DEF, you run out of fluid and you're stuck somewhere. And then you have horses on your trailer and you're stressed. Also check your connections. I've had a trailer unhook itself from my truck. That was not a very fun day either. Also, as I've learned with doing this, I've driven from Virginia to Maine and down south and all over the place, often by myself, is I have learned that I carry all my own horse water. I also carry a little jug in the living quarters that I can quickly make some mash for my horse and some extra water for my horse. So I don't have to try to crawl into the back of my truck on the side of a highway, trying to get extra water for my horse. Also, when I was learning from Lonnie, similar, my mare was not doing well coming back trailering. I looked in her eyes, she wasn't there. I gave her electrolytes because I realized she was down. So I had to go and dig through things in my trailer to find her electrolytes. I don't do that anymore. I have a little emergency go bag for my horse on the trailer, which has some food, has water, and has electrolytes. So if shit's going wrong, I can stop and go, okay, what do I need to do to help her? I knew I had done the right thing because when I got her home and left her off the trailer, she went galloping away from me saying, good. And I knew that she felt much better. I think if I had not done that, it would have been a different experience. So this is where, again, prevention, shit happens. There's so many. And I will tell you, you'll be surprised. I have, because of one of the insurance programs I have, I am able to call them, and you will be surprised how many tires can get replaced in ride camps. I have limped into many of a ride camp with a tire that has gone flat or gone wrong or something, and tire people will come and take care of it. This is why when I talk to my friends and people I know that are getting into endurance, I will say my first win is getting to the ride itself. For me, that is always a win because I've had so many different things happen to me before traveling to rides. It happens. Shit happens. I have horrible tire karma. Knock on wood. But anyway, that's part of what we're talking about, outside forces. And another of those outside forces is weather. And again, prevention and a plan is a key, and this is going to be Lonnie.
So stuff is pretty obvious, but decide if you're going to a hot ride or a cold ride. And again, the horses love cold rides up to a point. But if you know, again, if you're going to Iron Mountain or you're going to ride between the rivers, you know it's going to be hot, then think about your electrolytes, plan your electrolytes. Everybody has a different electrolyte program, but it is going to be different if it's April at Foxcatcher versus August. How much you give, maybe even what kind you give. I know some people use different electrolytes depending on what time of year it is if you know it's going to be hot, plan. And again, the Arabians usually do okay. But if you're riding a non-Arabian, when we're talking about setting water up, and I just read this study somewhere about cooling, and they've done this a million times. Is it better if you cool a horse by putting cold water on than scraping it off? Is it better if you put cold water on the horse and don't scrape it off? Is it better if you put a fan on and blah, blah, blah? And the end of this particular study is the most effective way to cool a horse was to continuously put water on them. Don't scrape it off, just continuously put water on them as if you were sort of submerging them. And they were taking internal temperatures, and they found that their temperatures dropped much faster if you just put gobs of water on it. So again, you'll see at our vet check areas is we don't use buckets, we use trash cans, because number one, my horse comes in and he'll drink about 30 gallons of water right off the spot, but we need to keep putting water on them. And again, Sonia's had a big horse too, but if you're using a non-Arabian, you need to be prepared to put, don't be thinking, and in a perfect world, when you're riding, you don't want to have to really refill in between vet checks either. You barely have enough time in the vet check to take care of yourself and your horse. So if you think you're going to be doing a 50 or 100 is different, because it doesn't usually come back. Well, maybe they do come back to the same spot, but you need to make sure that you've got enough water stockpiled up. And then we usually cover it, because if it's 85 or 95 degrees, the water is going to get hot. So we try to put a white lid on it or something to keep the water even barely cool. If you're going to bring ice with a passion. I mean, be serious about it. Get yourself a great big Yeti cooler, a great big Coleman cooler or something, because usually you get into camp like on Thursday and the ride's not till Saturday. But don't get 2 bags of ice, get 20 or 30 bags of ice. And if you think you're going to need ice and you're lucky enough to have a crew, don't put the ice in the water till you see the horse coming up to you. Because if you put the ice in the water and then the horse comes in an hour later, you've got some nice tepid water there. So if you're going to use ice to cool a horse down, be serious about it. Put water on them, and we don't even use sponges anymore. I know a lot of people don't use sponges because sponges are too slow. If you want to soak a horse with water because it's hot, then use scoops, use whatever can you have to get water onto them. But again, train in the heat if it's going to be hot, and train in the heat of the day and get them nice and miserable and sweaty. And you too, there's no point in your training when it's cool. When you get to the ride, figure out which way is east and which way is west, and figure out, because then you figure my horse, when I bring him into the vet check and I'm going to tie him to the side of my trailer, it's okay for him to be in the sun in the morning up till 10 o'clock, but I want to make sure in the afternoon he's on the shady side of the trailer. If you're not, most of us aren't lucky enough to be able to have trees there, but figure out how you're going to park to maximize your horse's exposure to shade, because sometimes that can make a huge difference. And again, if it's going to be hot, just assume you're going to go slower. Just do not think you can do your 10 miles an hour unless you're trained, unless you have a spectacular horse. Do not think you're going to be able to rip around if it's hotter than you're used to. And the thing about the night before is the same thing with trailering, is the night before is critical, because if it's, I mean, I hate it when it rains, and it's not that I don't like rain. I don't like my horses standing up to their knees in mud the night before a ride. That just makes my heart bleed, because of course they don't stand still. So they kind of shuffle around and they're really up to their shins in mud. And I'm thinking, boy, this is probably affecting their happiness for the remainder of the ride. But the things that you have to think about is thunderstorms. If they're getting thunderstormed on, they're not sleeping, especially hail. So one of the things we say is, we're sitting there packing the trailer, and the trailer's always packed anyway, but you're thinking, can I take my winter blankets out because it's summertime and I need the space? And we just leave them in the trailer, because there have been times when it hails at night. There have been times when a thunderstorm comes through and the temperature drops 20 or 30 degrees overnight, and you're sitting there in your trailer listening to the rain beat on the trailer, thinking, okay, not only is he out there getting wet, the hailstorms are beating on him, and he's just going to be too stiff and too cold to start in the morning. And also just bringing coolers, because our big thing was at the Old Dominion, that was back in 2018, which is the last time I did the 100, because we were all out there in that hailstorm, and it dropped 40 degrees in a couple hours. We'd had these violent storms come through, and it hailed, so it had rained. It continued to rain for probably 50 hours of that 100, but we also had hail, and people were trying to cover horses with anything they had, feed bags, anything you had in the truck. And so, because when you bring them into the vet check and they're already on edge, because they're like, okay, I'm cold and I'm wet, I've been walking through shin deep mud, and now I'm going to have to stand here in the rain, I will not be able to continue. So always have blankets with you and sheets with you. Feel your horse first, because a lot of times people routinely cover their horses out of habit, and they'll come in at 10 o'clock in the morning and they'll come ripping into the vet check and promptly throw a sheet on them or a cooler on them. I'm thinking, ow, ooh, ow. You know, put your hand on their skin first. And if they're radiating heat, maybe they want to cool a little bit, and vice versa. If you put your hand on their skin and they're feeling a little chilly, maybe they want to be covered. So just be ready. Just carry the weather does whatever it's going to do, and the wind does whatever it's going to do. And again, like our favorite one is, another one of our favorite one is our no frills ride, is because it's early in the year and there's still really no leaves on the trees. Sometimes there are these lovely icicles on the trees. But they tend to stand. Some of them are unfortunate enough to stay, you know, so the ride's on Friday and Saturday, and you come on Thursday. And if you're helping or working on Friday, then the horse stands at the trailer, kind of chilly. And then you go out and ride on Saturday. And the first thing you do is go up a hill for the first mile. And that's just asking for a tie up. If it's a cold day, your horse has been standing at the trailer, has not moved around much. So those kind of situations, again, plan accordingly. Either get on way early and walk around. What if you watch your horses, if you observe them, it's the same thing as a runner. If you're dumb enough to be a runner, when you're running, the first mile is awful. The second, you're just like, just kill me now. The second mile is not a whole lot better. And when you hit about the 40-minute point, all of a sudden you feel good. You can move, you can actually run. And that for me lasts at least a minute. But you feel really good. And the horses are the same way. As if you actually got on your horse and walked it and kept walking down the trail, you will feel a certain length of stride, and then you will feel a certain, you know, up and down motion. And at about 45 minutes, it clicks. And I'm thinking, whoa, that took a long time. And you don't see that when everybody trots out the beginning, and everybody trots up the hill, and everybody trots here, and everybody trots. But with most of our horses, it takes them like 45 minutes before their head comes down and they lengthen out. So that doesn't mean you have to walk for 45 minutes, but that means that you are in danger of making a screw up if you're not conscious of your horse for that first half hour, 45 minutes or so. For yourself, one thing Kathy always brings, she always has a trash bag, a large trash bag rolled up in her pack, along with everything else. We carry an extra stirrup leather, we carry this, we carry that, but she always has an extra trash bag because she has been caught on the mountains too many times. And if you don't have a raincoat, or even if you do have a raincoat, all you do is you poke your head through the middle of the trash bags and stick your little arms out the sides, and you are way warmer than you were before if you were soaking wet. So she always has and it's not like a cheapo trash bag either. It's one with like 3 mil or something like that. But she's always got one in her pack because she's been caught in the rain way too many times to be comfortable. And if all else fails, you put the trash bag on your horse's butt. But that's something that's small and weightless to carry that might save your bacon. Because again, what happens is something happens and you end up on the ground leading your horse, which means that we're limited to your speed and the horse is now getting cold. You can cover them with your trash bag. And again, like Terry was saying, is you never know when you're going to be, you don't plan to being caught out at night. But so we always have in each one of our trailers, we have what we call the night bag. And in the night bag is headlamps and light sticks and lots of things that anything you need, and also hand flashlights, things like that. And there's one in every trailer. And then we also carry headlamps. You don't want to have to be looking for them. If all of a sudden you're going out, especially this time of year, and you forget that it's not light till 9:30 at night, it's light till 4:47 at night, then you want to be able to have a headlamp at hand. You're not going to ride with a headlamp. You want to be able to find the ribbons. You want to be able to, when you come to a turn on your light and say, which way this is my way home. And then you turn your light back off and you keep on going. But you always want to know where that is just in case you need it.
Okay, thank you, Lonnie. And now we're going to go to pictures of my horse. And this is where I have my own. It says shit happens, but don't let it scare you. Learn from it. You see a picture of, this is my mare, Awesome Blossom. She's not an Arabian. She is gaited. She is a spotted mountain horse. And yes, she is beautiful. I agree. Except I want you to take a look at the picture of her with that blue blanket on. She has a white bandage around her neck. She was metabolically treated. This was in 2017. I rode her on a 50. I ignored a lot of signs that she was giving me that day in that season of she wasn't doing right. The feet are in cold. This is on a cold day. My friend has her hood up on her jacket, but her feet are in ice because we were afraid she was foundering. We had pulled shoes off. It was scary. That night, I thought my horse was going to die. I admit it 100%. I worry. It forever has changed me as a horse person. My good friend tells me that she is my learning horse, and I agree with this 100%. But then I went back, I took her home. I learned a lot about feet. I learned a lot about hooves. I learned about angles. I learned about negative palmar angles and rounded toes and everything. I also learned about how to better manage her metabolically, because I think she might have a muscle thing going on. Well, the picture with her blanket on with the bandage is 2017. The picture of her taking off on a canter was 2018 at the same Fort Valley ride, and that's where she got us our Triple Crown. So we got our first Old Dominion Triple Crown. The ride below was this year at 2021, sorry. I had promised this mare that I would never take her to Fort Valley again because it was not our favorite ride. Well, she proved me wrong. She rocked it at this ride and she did really well. So I want to show you that yes, shit can happen and it's scary. And once you smell what DMSO smells like, if you never have, you will never forget. But learn from it, and then you can come back and you can actually do better. And she has come back and shown me she likes her job, she likes her sport. She at this Fort Valley ride this year, she told me very bluntly, we need to start in front. And I said, okay, Mare, we will. But you got to listen to your horse. I've learned a lot, but I wanted to show you this is truly the shit happening, the bad stuff, but then we also have the good stuff. And this is why I keep staying in the sport. I'm in this sport because of the journey and not per se the destination. And my journey on with this gaited mare, non-Arab, has been fascinating. And I have learned so much from her. And I am so grateful to this horse. She's one of my best friends. But I had to show you this to say, this is why I said with the webinar, let's do something about what happens at a pull, what happens when you have a bad day, because I've had a few and I wanted to be able to maybe help some others, but I wanted to show them this one. Okay, so the next one is one way to learn is to volunteer. I had a year, I started Blossom at it. Her name is Blossom. Yes, her name is Awesome Blossom because she's so darn cute. I had a year where I started riding her and I took her to Foxcatcher. I took her to another ride. She cramped. She got pulled for cramps. And I said, something's not right. I need to figure some of this stuff out. So I decided that next spring I went to volunteer because it's a great way to sit along with experienced endurance riders and talk to them and learn things from them. So we're going to have Diane talk more about volunteering.
We're always putting the pitch for volunteering. Both No Frills and the Old Dominion, the June ride, are you don't come back to camp to the finish. So we actually need more volunteers at those two rides than you do for a ride that's all in camp. But again, as this slide says, you can learn so much from volunteering and from watching other riders and how they handle their horse, or walking around the vetting area and seeing how, if you're just actually helping crew, because at No Frills and at the Old Dominion, we have vet checks where crew are not allowed. So we depend on volunteers to actually help crew. And if you watch how a rider, especially the experienced riders, handle their horses, what they feed their horses, what electrolytes they give their horses, you can learn so much for yourself in that area of prevention so it doesn't happen to you. So this is just a plug that, we're always looking for volunteers for both those rides and for our Fort Valley. And it's a great way to learn. It's a great way to ask a lot of questions. And I mean, horrible to say, but watching a horse get treated, watching a horse that is in trouble and seeing what the signs are and seeing what the vets do, you yourself can learn from that for your own horse. And as Sonia was just saying, you learn so much more. I mean, I had a horse tie up at Biltmore and I, was in that panic stage of, oh, what have I done wrong? Until a vet pulled me aside and said, look around, there's 28 horses being treated for tie up. It was the perfect storm. It was early spring. It was super rich grass. We had come, all of us getting treated, 90% of us were from the Northeast where our grass hadn't been growing yet. So sometimes it is just circumstance and you still can learn from that. Anytime I've gone to Biltmore since then, I don't let my horse graze. I make sure I take her out and warm her up and get a sweat every day. So that perfect storm will never happen again. But yes, I highly encourage people to volunteer because you can learn so much when you do.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Now we're coming to the end of our presentation. Thank you for being patient. I have some different sides of resources. This first one, ARC, is on the education tab, there's something that says recognizing problems. I got some of the information for this presentation from there. They have a lot more things there. We've only really started to tap into this. Old Dominion, we have in our endurance primer, it's a great information for new riders. We also have a section about when things go wrong. I would recommend going and reading that. Trail Guard and US Rider are the two riding insurance problems, the on-road assistance that I talked to you about. Again, if you email me, I'll tell you which one I like better. And the Harley horse, my plug for my friend, she made me a custom Suck It Up Buttercup and a But Did You Die rider shirt that I wear when I go to competitions. And I will continue. Let me show you the other. We also have more resources. These are some more basic resources that we have. And again, more resources here. Green Beans, if you're a newbie rider, really think about joining Green Beans. It's a great way to get some extra support. Electrolytes are very confusing. They still, for me, for everybody, there's some good things about electrolytes here. This Endurance Essentials web-based course, this is put on by Patty Carey, and it is if you like a webinar format that you can learn about endurance. I took this course, it helped me a lot too. And finally, we are to questions and answers. Terry said this the other night, I wrote it down, it's perfect. You win some, you learn some. And that is the But Did You Die logo that my friend has made, and I have this on a shirt. So I hope you enjoyed it. And I guess it is actually already 9:13. Panelists, what do we want to do about these? We have 20 of them, it looks like, or probably more. What do we want to do about questions?
Let's answer a few of them, and people can always check off when they need to.
Yes.
Okay. Fabulous.
So I'll go through a couple of them. There's a couple questions on shoes. How do you glue on? How do you get off Easy Boot that you've glued on?
You have to cut the leg off at the knee. If you really glue an Easy Boot on and you know what you're doing, they don't come off. And so that's it's an expensive process because you're going to throw away the Easy Boot and you've used a lot of glue. But it takes away one worry that you're doing. And we used to use Easy Foam. Easy Foam used to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but they stopped producing that. So if you really glue a shoe on, that's one thing you do not have to worry about on the ride. You can't get it off when you get home. I usually give it 2 weeks, and we turn them out in a field with a pond in it. And so they spend a while standing in the water, because if you try to get it off, the way you have to get it off, you are gonna throw the boot away because you can't get the glue out of the boot, is you have to use a hammer and a screwdriver, and you have to pound it down in between the Easy Boot and the hoof. But if it's truthfully glued well, you can't just loosen it then pop it off. You have to loosen 360 degrees all the way around. So we find that it's a whole lot easier if you give it a couple weeks. The horses run around the field with its boots on anyway. It doesn't matter. The feet don't rot. It's not a problem. They breathe. They do fine. And so we just leave them on for a week or two, preferably in a field with a pond in it, before you take them off. And even when you try to get them off, then if the glue really works, it takes a screwdriver and you have to go 360 degrees all the way around the whole foot and then throw the boot in the trash.
Great, thank you. A question of how do you know if you need boots if you haven't had shoes or boots because you're used to riding in softer footing?
Well, I'll speak to the Old Dominion. It is a requirement. It is required to have hoof protection on all 4 feet to do any of our rides because of the rocky terrain.
Okay.
So I think there are some spectacular horses who can go barefoot. And the hard part about the East, compared to being out West, is out West, they're a drier footing. They're not standing on soft grass. And so they have much, much harder feet out there. Around here, our horses just, anywhere east of the Mississippi or wherever, they just have softer feet. So you may think your horses, we have people, you watch these horses on rides and they think they can go barefoot and the horses are suffering and their riders don't know it. I mean, it's as if you try to get out, you take out your little shoes off and you go run across your driveway, you have that ouch, 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 hot coals maneuver. And you can see horses, because a lot of people will shoe their horses in the front, not in the hind, because that makes sense. But then when you take them out on these rides where you're doing more than you're used to and you're not in control of where you're going, even in South Carolina, we go down and do the Carolina ride, there's these sections of gravel and you're like, I'm in the sand, man. What is this doing here? But we're thinking, I sure am glad I have shoes on my horse here. So it costs so much to get to a ride. I mean, it costs you years of getting dumped and getting the right trailer and learning to ride your horse in a straight line. Is that don't be cheap at the time for the ride. This is a time, if you have a good set of shoes from a good farrier, and whether you need boots or, and boots are again a tricky thing. I can't help you with the boots because I don't have the patience for them. But if you have a good set of shoes, that's going to eliminate one huge factor for failure with your horse. If you have a good set of shoes on, because when you go to a ride, you're going to come to sections that you can't pick the easiest trail. You're going to come to sections where you have to ride it, and your horse may look okay to you, but it's going ouch, 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 ouch down the trail.
There's a question of if you lose a shoe and you use a boot, how does that affect the balance of your horse?
Do you want that one, Terry?
Yeah, typically you are not using that shoe or that boot for very long. You are basically getting yourself to the next vet check so that you can get a shoe replaced. So for the duration of that time frame, I've never had a concern with the way my horse is moving.
I think John Crandall has a number, and I'm going to get this wrong, but I think he says you can do about 31 miles, and John Crandall knows what he's talking about. And so I'm going to get this number wrong, but he said there's a distance you can ride with a barefooted horse with an easy boot that's missing a shoe before something starts to go wrong, whether it's your heels get rubbed or whether the fact that the horse is not getting as much support from the boot as it used to. I mean, I've ridden 40 miles when I've lost a horse lost a shoe at Ride Between the Rivers. And since the boot was doing okay, I just finished the last 40 miles on it and did okay. But John Crandall has a limit, as he says, if you go over this amount of miles, you're going to get into more trouble just because you're not used to that boot.
Right.
And then there's a question about how do you measure for boots, but I think that's dependent upon the type of boot. They each have very specific measurements.
Correct.
And they have information on the website on how to measure for your shoe, for your foot. A question about, do you ever pre-soak hay before a ride to help with hydration?
You want that one, Terry?
Yeah, I don't pre-soak hay. I do a lot of mashy, mushy beet pulp, soak their rice bran, making sure that everything they get is soup so that they're slurping up water to get to any kind of food. And, oftentimes when you go to a ride, the water source is not what they're used to at home. And some horses will be particular about that. So sprinkling a little bit of their grain or, some special kind of food or a snack in the bottom of a bucket of water, your aggressive eaters will slurp down the water to get to that little bit of snack, sort of like bobbing for apples.
And I think the question is good. I think the question is because ideally soaking hay would make sense because hay is dried grass, and adding water to it in theory would always be a good idea. But for some reason, it's something that horses don't appreciate. Is we often tell people to wet their hay, but for some reason horses do not thank you for their hay. We soak alfalfa cubes, we soak everything, but if you soak hay, they will always choose something else to eat, anything besides that.
And along those lines, do you have any tips for getting a horse to drink on the trailer? This person says that horse eats hay very well, but hasn't mastered drinking when they stop.
We do shallow pan with yummy stuff in it that's soup. And we will sit at a vet or at a rest stop and let them eat that slurry. And it has led to, over time, that I can put a bucket of water in that manger and they will suck down that bucket of water.
Right. It doesn't happen overnight because if you hand a horse a 5-gallon bucket of water with a handful of grain on the bottom, they'll look at you like they're crazy. And if they're smart enough, they'll tip the bucket over to get to the grain at the bottom. But just as Terry says, if you start with a little bit, and I watched Valerie Canavy do this probably 40 years ago, and I was just so impressed, is that we were doing this training thing and she had her horse on the trailer and she opened the door and she handed it a 5-gallon, I mean, honest to gosh, a 5-gallon bucket of water. And the horse sucked the whole thing down and then very happily ate the handful of grain at the bottom. Well, you know, that didn't happen overnight. And so exactly as Terry says, you really have to start with wet grain, a handful. And then you have to start with, and this, we're talking a year, we're not talking tomorrow. And then you start with an inch of water and they'll play in it. And then you start with 2 inches of water and then you get to a point where you can add more. And you're never going to hand them a 5-gallon bucket because if they manage to drink a 1-gallon bucket, you're going to be so tickled you can't even see straight. But you're talking a long time.
Yes, everything we do is a process. So, you're creating these habits and methods, starting in your own barn, starting on your training rides. You cannot expect your horse's behavior to be something at a competition that it is not when you are at home.
So there are a couple questions about electrolytes, both for horses and for people. I know that can be a whole lecture in its own right. So I don't know if you want to address that, but that's a question of electrolytes and for both people and horses.
Maybe we can address that when we do everything right next month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can do that.
That would
And
be
also,
good.
go on the AERC website. If you go on the AERC website under education, there are several phenomenal articles that you look at and think, wow, I didn't know that.
With regard to electrolytes for people, some of what appeals to us has to do with the flavor and the formulation. One of the things we did with the teenagers that I work with, we literally set up shots. We had little Dixie cups filled with different kinds of electrolytes, and 1, 2, 3, and everybody took some. And then sometimes it was like, wow, that's pretty good, and other times it was like, this is so gross. So just buying a sample pack of different brands, taste it first, because sometimes the taste is the first thing that turns you off, and then start using it during your training rides and see if it actually works. There are drinks that you can do. There are goos and gummies, and if you talk to 10 people, you'll get 25 answers on what's the best. And it's a lot of trial and error.
My wife uses caplets. They're made by Succeed. She's a long distance runner, and you miss the taste because the caplet goes down and then hits your stomach.
Yep.
And sometimes taking those little packets and splitting it between 2 water bottles to get yourself used to the taste, and then try to build up on the consistency once you're used to it helps too.
Great. There's a couple questions about training. One says, you spoke about not overtraining and not really riding much once they get to the level of condition. And so the questions we're talking about 100-mile horses, I'm presuming. Does that apply to 50-mile horses? Also gathering, this is why people are able to have more than one 100-mile horse. I'm mentally stuck on how much riding it takes to get a horse going up to 50s and trying to do it with 2 horses. That's also a whole conversation, how to train a
That
horse.
is, there's a lot in that question. It's a big question.
So do we want to address that next month as when it all goes right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of information out there on the internet. There's a lot of information on Facebook. There's a lot of information in endurance news. You sort of have to take a conglomeration of that and figure out what makes sense for you, your horse, your lifestyle. I know a lot of new riders think they have to condition, ride. One of the pieces of information out there says, you know, if you're going to do a 30-mile ride, you have to do 30 miles in a week. And it's like, all in my experience, all that gets you is a tired horse. So, you know, doing your buildup slowly using that LSD concept of training, long, slow, distance, has been the most successful program in my barn. Starting with long, slow miles and not a lot of ripping around and clocking the miles. Don't be so concerned about how fast you're going. Think more about the quality of your movement. And if you are using the right muscles in the movement and your horse can sustain its movement for the length of what an average loop is, then you're golden.
And I would speak to, when you're talking about what your lifestyle is or what your work schedule is. When I first got into endurance in 2000, I was a school administrator. The only time I could ride was Saturday and Sunday if I was lucky. During those years, I used competitions for training. That means you're just going into the ride with a different mindset. You're not going into top 10. You're not going in, you're doing it truly on the mindset that you're using it as a training ride to build your horse up. So maybe by the end of the season, you might be able to move up in the finish or whatever. But going by that old adage, to finish is to win. So if you've got a 40-hour week and you can only ride on weekends, you do what you can and you work towards getting the horse fit for those 50s or 75s or 100s.
Oh, thank you. I have a question of, if you're first learning, you're still learning, you're new to the ride. And I think, Lonnie, you had said that you want to ride your own ride, but if you're just learning, wouldn't it be better to ride with someone? And also, how do you find a mentor near you?
I'll answer about the mentor part. ARC on the website has a whole list of mentors that you can find. They'll give you a mentor list for the Northeast area. That's how I found my first mentor in the area. If you go to the ARC website.
And I think also, again, the green beans is huge.
Yeah.
Sonia bean to the max, because I agree is that if you're super lucky and have a miracle of a horse and have basic common sense, you can go out and do this by yourself and just watch what everybody else is doing and do just fine. I've gotten to the point in my life that I always ride with a babysitter. I never ride by myself. because I just don't want to deal with the vagaries of what happens. I don't want to deal with anything. So I always ride with a babysitter and have them ride buffer for me so I don't have to deal with anything. But I really think what Sonia was saying with the green beans is that there are so many teams out there that you say, which of you is going to be going to ride between the rivers, or which of you is going to be going to Muckle Rats. And so you're not going to be by yourself, because I have no shame. And so now at this point, because I can get away with it because I'm old, is when I was at Iron Mountain, I was riding by myself, and I went up to somebody, I said, "What speed are you going? Can I follow you?" Because I did not want to go out by myself. I mean, I find that terribly annoying, but I tried my hardest to be not annoying, but I did not want to be out there by myself. But other than that, green bean it, man, that's the way to go.
Green Beans is a fabulous program. I discovered it when I first got into endurance, and it's for any rider that has under 1,000 miles. It's a combination of LDs and 50s, and I'm no longer a green bean anymore. So I'm finally out of green beans, but you don't pay a lot of money. There's a great Facebook community. You can get a green bean team that you can communicate with and talk to. There's special discounts that you can get. It's a fabulous program to learn more about how to do endurance, and all different ages of people join green beans. It's a fabulous, and if you are interested, if you're on the East Coast, I'm going to put a plug for the East Coast Trail Ride Association Extra. Those are CTRs. That's another way that they have some 15 and 25, 15-mile, 10-mile rides. You can learn about those, and those extra rides and CTRs will count as points for your green bean. So you can earn green bean points there too. There's different ways to earn green bean points. But I agree with Lonnie. Green bean is a beautiful way to learn more about endurance.
And often ride managers will ask at the ride briefing if any, who's brand new to the sport, this is your first time at this ride. A lot of times we will give out green ribbon for you to put on you or on your horse. And then people usually are very quick to, if you want help, to offer to help you when you come into the vet checks or when you're out on trail. If they ride up on you and you've got a green ribbon on you or green bandana, they'll ask if you're okay. Do you need help? So, I mean, this is a huge family that are there to help the newbies when they come into this sport.
I agree with that 100%.
Somebody had some ideas for just carrying medical information, medical ID bracelets or road ID bracelets. There's also, you can get medical information stickers that you can put inside your helmet. So there's all sorts of ways, but I think it's always a great idea to carry some medical information on you.
Definitely.
Absolutely. There was also at one point, it might have been in Endurance News, but there was a very good suggestion to have some of your basic contact information at your trailer and to place that right inside your trailer door, of your living quarters or someplace that a person not with you could easily locate, so that in the awful event that you were not lucid or conscious, they could easily access information and find, someone to be able to make a call to quickly.
That's a great idea. We had a question about Desitin versus Vaseline for rubs.
Yes, and yes. If you have a rub, put something on it. Desitin, Vaseline, chapstick. They make, oh goodness, the words are escaping me right now, but body glide.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And there are things now with funky names for your nether regions that, that you can put on
Monkey butt
things.
powder too.
Monkey butt.
Monkey butt powder. Like, yes, there are many, many products.
Well,
We've been known, if you have to spray it with cooking oil, Pam cooking spray,
Show sheen on girth and girth area.
Show sheen in the girth area.
And that silver spray I've just learned works fantastic in the girth area.
Ah, that's good to know too.
Yep, it's
Yeah,
solved.
if you're in need, you can MacGyver just about anything to help a situation.
Mhm.
There's just a general question, so you can change pads and girth covers at vet checks, and
Yes,
we covered that, yes.
absolutely. It's all about being comfortable and happy. That
Yes.
goes for you and your horse. We have been known to do complete wardrobe changes in bad weather.
I have a horse that is extremely, extremely, extremely skin sensitive. I get her through 50s and 75s by changing to a brand new girth at every loop. I have 4 girths I carry to every ride and change the pad halfway through. And she finishes 75s. But before I did that, she was pulled half the time for girth balls.
Wow.
And then on that, talking about with people, like what underwear options are recommended?
We
None.
could go on for
Try.
hours and hours and hours and reveal way too much personal information about ourselves. There are lengthy chats about undergarments, both bras and underwear, underwear for men and women, on Facebook. If you go on the AERC Facebook page, and literally you can search underwear, and there are threads and threads and threads of
One today about
questions,
bras.
comments.
Yes.
Yeah, so, it's kind of, do you, don't you, what kind if you choose to, and people reveal all.
And if you
and it's for men and
tights,
women.
and if you use
Yes,
riding
there are.
tights like wild side tights, they're already sewn in and you don't wear underwear.
Commando.
But don't
got
get
it.
injured because they want to cut your pants off.
I will share, I had a rather nasty accident in a brand new pair of tights. I am in the don't wear any camp. So I'm a commando rider, because you all needed to know that about me. But there I am lying on a cot, and the first thing the EMTs wanted to do was cut my pants off. And I grabbed the guy by the collar and I said, do not cut above the knee. And he was like, okay, crazy lady. And I, said, because the nurse was like, why not? I'm like, because I don't have any underwear on. She's like, yep, done. Stop at the knee. So it was all good.
And mine is a very similar story. I was injured, leg injury, and I would not let them take me in the ambulance till I got my brand new riding pants off. And in the middle of taking them off, I almost passed out and said, okay, you can come get me out of my trailer now. But I had underwear on then.
That's funny.
So there's a question about roughing it in bad weather. Do you ever put your horse on a trailer to wait out a storm?
I have.
Yeah. I mean, some horses will, some people will leave the trailer door open and, make the pen where it includes the trailer, and the horse will put themselves on the trailer, like, peace out, people, I'm not standing in the rain. So yeah,
We had a year
they're
at Ride.
comfortable.
We had a year at Ride Between the Rivers where the storm blew in and it rained 8 inches of rain. I think almost everybody in camp put their horse on the trailer, and when it was over, we were standing in 6 inches of water under our trailers. So, Yep.
That wasn't riding between the rivers, was it?
No, we were riding in the river. That was base camp. It was the old base camp, and it was underwater.
Wow.
Wow.
Yep.
There's a bunch of questions about feeding your horse. One question is, what is horse tea?
Horse tea, I think, is what Terry was talking about. I put that in there. This is one of those days I learned about Blossom. She wouldn't drink because it was too cold. A friend of mine talked about horse tea where he had hot water, warm water. She put some rice bran in it and put some grain. And Blossom, wife said, Blossom won't drink that. And she made me a liar and drank the whole bucket down. So that's what I considered horse tea. And that's why I said in earlier was I always make sure you have a way of, in the cold to have some warm water, because your horse may not want to drink ice cold water in the winter, and I don't blame them.
There's a bunch of questions about like if your horse is sensitive to food, or how do you introduce food? How do you avoid colics by, not changing your food? So that's a number of questions about that. Some of them are fairly in depth. Not sure how you want to handle those questions.
Well, as far as having sensitive horses, I can't speak to that. I've never had those. I quite frankly am always baffled. I've shared a crew area with someone who literally said to me, "How do you get your horse to eat?" And I kind of said, "Well, I put a bucket in front of them." My horses are very food motivated. So keeping them relaxed, I think that's part, it goes back firstly to, this is fun. If you are stressing about what we're doing, and if you are stressing your horse out to the point where they won't eat, you need to go back and reevaluate. They should be looking for food, both going down the trail and in vet checks and when they get an opportunity to rest. So that's the first thing.
And Terry spoke to it also. It starts at home. All my endurance horses are fed a mash every single day, so they're used to a wet feed. I also do, as Terry talked about, anytime you do a training ride, when you come back to the trailer, you put a mash in front of them. And I actually, for my younger horses, will simulate a trot out, so they learn how to trot beside you and trot back. And then I feed them the mash. So it starts at home in the relaxed environment, getting them used to expecting that bucket of food in front of them after they've worked. And then that will carry over to the rides when you can get them relaxed in the vet check.
And you'll also find out that the particular horse may like one thing wet, but not something else. So you may have to experiment with what you're putting in it for them to accept it a little more easily.
And I think that's
Right.
a legitimate question about not changing their diet, but we all do. Because I know we're not supposed to, you're not supposed to change your horse's diet, blah, blah, blah. And our horses live out 24/7 on grass and never see a hint of grain. And then they come to the rides and we don't give them any grain before the ride for the same reason that Diane was talking about, is avoiding tying up. We stay away from grain and alfalfa until they start riding. But once they start riding, they get buckets of feed. And we try to give as much. What we try to do is we actually try to graze them first. If there's any grass, we let them graze once they come in off the check, let them graze till they're full of grass, because we figure there's nothing better than grass with all that moisture and all that carbs in it. And then we offer them grain. But I would say that all of our horses eat things they've never seen before, because they all go over to the next crew area and eat their grain, and somehow they all live. So we know it's bad to change your horse's food, but every ride our horses eat, all of our horses probably eat, 50 times what they normally would eat at home, and things that they've never seen before, and they all live.
And
Yeah,
usually if you have a horse not eating in a vet check, people are offering you all different kinds of grain. And I offer my stuff to people when their horse suddenly won't eat their stuff. When they're working that hard and they're burning off that many calories, whatever they'll put in there to replace those calories, we give it to them.
My
It's
one
really-
mare, like
no
apple.
different.
Sorry, Terry.
No, that's okay. It's similar to a person. You're working hard, your body's hot, so things that normally taste good don't taste so good when you're working that hard. And quite frankly, do you really want the same peanut butter sandwich at every vet check along the way for 100? At some point, you're like, give me something different. So it's that, somebody else cooks a meal and it always tastes better than one you fix yourself. So trading and offering different types of things, goes over really well with the ponies.
Also bringing carrots and apples. My one mare prefers carrots and the other one prefers apples. So he knows preferences too. It all depends on the horse.
Yeah. There's just a general question. If you're riding in a place where there really isn't anything to eat for the horse along the trail, do you pack something with you for them to eat?
Absolutely. We snack we pretty much ride to eat. That goes for my horses and me. It's a big buffet all the way down the trail. I have pockets filled with we do peanuts in the shell. They love them. They're like circus elephants eating the peanuts in the shell. Carrots, apples, granola bars. Those are big favorites later in a ride because they're dry, they're easy to carry. I can have some, horse can have some. So we share a lot of the snacks that are in the pack.
So I think that addresses the questions about electrolytes. There's some questions about calcium, and I think that goes along with electrolytes. There's, as was mentioned, there's some great information on the AERC website about electrolytes and calcium. So certainly strongly recommend people go look at that. But I think we've addressed all the questions.
Fabulous. Well, I would say that we're finished. Share here and say thank you to all of our participants. Thank you for coming along and listening to us, and we appreciate it. And this will be recorded and will be put on our website at a different time. Hope you learned something. I know I did, and we hope we see you at a ride. Thank you much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
This was great.
We have 8 people still on. Yes.
It went long, but a fantastic webinar.
Yeah, I learned a lot.
I
always
did
learn a
too.
lot.
I was like taking notes.
I always learn a lot from this crowd. So thank you all for sharing your time.
Okay,
and
Terry, what was your
expertise.
injury that you refused to let them cut your pants off?
Vermont. We drove to Vermont for the 100. I went out for a warm-up ride. Some bicycles came around the corner, scared the bejesus out of Wolf, who took off at a gallop through the woods, knocked me into a tree, and I came off. The two of us ended up with stitches and a very long, sad ride home without ever starting the ride. It was awful.
Mine was right between the rivers when Eminem disappeared in the sinkhole up to her chest. And when I tried to get off, I ended out under her in the sinkhole, and she used my leg as a bounding board to get out.
Ow!
Dana Reeder, I was with Kathy Rice. Dana Reeder cussed me out because I was on the ground, got me out of my shock and got me back on my horse. 3-mile ride in. As I got into camp, I made the mistake of taking my half cap off, and my lower leg was bigger than a football in front of my shin. And I went to the vet check and collapsed on the ground, put the leg in the air, and they wanted to cut the pants off right then. And I kept saying, no. And I kept saying, well, why not? I said, you guys know why? You guys know why? Brenda Stevens goes, I don't understand. Why not? And I went, because I don't have any goddamn underwear on. And I literally insisted, my trailer was right there. I'm going back to my trailer, and I got the pants off. And when I went to slide on the loose pants, the material touched the bruise, the big, huge hematoma. and I literally passed out. And I was like, I opened the trailer door and said, okay, I give, you can come get me now.
But you
And
had
Claire
everything.
Godwin,
I was able to send somebody back to my trailer and I was like, oh, get me some underwear for when I'm in the hospital.
Oh,
I
no.
had the underwear on, but the pants didn't quite make it on. And then Claire Godwin got in the ambulance and said, thanks for taking one for the team. Maybe I'll actually finish this ride.
Oh, my
Oh, no.
word.
She had been
Wow.
injured every year at that ride.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah. And my ride home was pretty bad. My best friend came to the ride because of the swimming hole. Thank God. I was in the back of my back seat with my leg up in the air like this with ice packs on it. And she drove us home from Ride Between the Rivers.
Oh my gosh.
Harry came home with her legs sticking between the front seats from Vermont too.
Yep. Laying all over my poor son because
Yep.
he rode up in the back seat and I was like laid out and drugged up. It was fun.
Oh.
Yeah.
Here I am. I'm doing it again. So obviously it wasn't that bad, right?
Exactly. We sucked it up and we didn't die, but did you die?
That's
I
right.
love Vermont. Ugh.
I
Um,
have yet to finish that ride.
Really?
We should plan on doing it together.
There you go. We will. I think that
I've
would be
done-
amazing.
I've
Yeah,
done two
I've been up there. I've been up there for that ride 3 times and have not finished it yet.
True will be ready for 100 in about another year or two. So maybe that'll be a good
Alright.
first one. We'll see.
Whoop,
Not,
whoop.
not the 100, the 75. The 75 is awesome there.
Do they do a 75 at Vermont? Yes,
Yes,
they do. You're
They
right.
do. You start
Okay.
at 9 in the morning and finish at 2 in the morning instead of starting at 4 a.m. for the 100.
Yeah,
Mm.
no, I would totally do the 75. Not an easy ride though. That one's a tough
No.
one because those hills just keep coming at you.
Mm.
And they're deceiving because so much of the road is like downhill and you got that concussion on the legs. And,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I love that ride. I love riding beside the runners.
Love to do that ride some year.
Yeah, I would like to, for sure.
It's a once in a lifetime experience. It's well worth it. So,
There you
Yeah,
go. We can
getting off.
plan a road
Elizabeth.
trip.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah. Poor Elizabeth keeps texting me from downstairs. Are you off yet? Are you off yet? Can I come up yet?
Well, this
I
is
think I'm gonna
fabulous,
drop
guys.
off. Thank you guys so much.
This was wonderful.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
good to see everybody and
Okay.
I'll be looking forward to planning the next one, and seeing you all
Yes.
there.
Yes, we will have to go and think about this one. I just talked to Diane that maybe in the future, what we could do is take this one and split it in half and have preparation. And then, because I think we could have done that too.
Yeah, preparation.
The hard part
and-
about splitting it is that you have something that is all about preparation and then something that is all about kind of negativity. So
Yeah.
I definitely think we just put there's a lot of information to share. You have to prepare like
Right.
so much.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
think people think they can jump in and they focus on the conditioning and how can I go fast and how can I do this, but some of these basic things are the time consuming things, you
No,
know.
I agree with that. No, I think it was powerful. I'm sure I'll get some emails and such. But that,
Awesome.
that was cool. It was very
That
cool.
or else if we do this one again next year, we just warn them that it's a full 2-hour presentation and then Q&A so that they know it's gonna go long.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
Well, I think we could
All
do
right,
one based on
guys, well, I still
lookalikes
have
and
work to
such.
do tonight, so I will talk to
Yes,
you
me
later.
too. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Good night, everybody. See you
Good
later.
night. See you later.
Stay safe the next storm.
What's that?
I said, stay safe. We're getting another storm tomorrow night. I don't know if you guys are gonna get it. I
Oh,
said,
It's
yeah.
supposed to be
stay
just
safe. And then
slushy crap, I think.
ours
Yeah,
is starting as slush and ending with snow on Thursday, so.
Yeah. We're still gonna get some stuff too.
We're still an ice skating rink out there. We've got over a half inch on top of the snow. The dogs are still
God.
running on top, trying to get momentum.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we've got a little bit
Oh,
out there,
it's
but most of
hysterical.
us,
We were
It's
videoing
gone.
it today. Daisy, it's like she goes and goes and goes and tries to get going. And then when she finally gets going, she tries to turn and she slides across the yard.
Little cartoon dog.
Oh, it is. It is hysterical because she's just got her paws are going and she's really not going anywhere because she's up on top of the ice.
I just got my first personal thank you for our webinar.
Oh, right as we were checking off, a ton of them were saying, what an awesome presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right
Yeah.
on the top.
Great, great. And was it like 40 something people, I think you said?
It was at one point we had 60 participants total.
Get out of here.
Actually
Very
on,
good.
actually on tonight.
Yeah, 63 total.
Wow.
So we had like 54 or something like participants, which was
Very
good.
good.
Yeah,
Wow.
considering I only advertised it a week ago.
But see, I think it's actually working better because it's close enough to it that people can make the commitment and
Right,
Yeah,
And I
too
put
far out, you may not, I don't know what's going to be happening in 3 weeks from now or whatever.
exactly.
So that may be working
exactly, or
out.
They forget.
Dave, did you hear from Sarah yet?
No, she was at a ride or something or somewhere. Wasn't she sometime this past weekend?
I
Or
don't know.
Oh, I think
You
you're right.
emailed Oh, yeah.
actually, let me check right now.
Okay, I'm gonna go so I can take care of some dogs.
Okay.
I hear
I'll see you
that.
later. Bye.
See, no, I haven't, but I'm sure I'll talk to her in the next day or so.
Yeah. I'll send tomorrow morning.
You're breaking up big time, Diane.
Oh, I need to get Wi-Fi. Bye.
See you
Bye,
guys.
Emily. She's muted. Bye.